I'm here to inflict force upon your eardrums by means of converting electric or waves in the air into an electrical signal to a digital signal, and then the other way around at your end. It is technically force. It's just negligible impact, unless I had an amplifier.
I thought you were over your materialism, and here you are materialisming all over my channel. Like, why are you doing this?
But because it's funny.
That's true. It is. It is funny. Do you want to go through the whole thing? Like, I told you, right? My roommate, who has a PhD from MIT, and who took his biomed. He took the bio at Harvard and the med at Harvard and the technical side at MIT, and got his PhD from MIT. He's an ear specialist. So if you actually want to talk about how the ears work, I actually do know every component.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I was just making a quick joke on my way in.
Hey, I'm just saying, like, the funny things that he's an interesting guy.
On
He
your
wrote the
way
Lemmings hint.
from where?
He co-wrote the Lemmings hint book too for the Lemmings game using my computer. But he was a roommate of mine, so I was in one of his experiments. I'm actually written up in a paper somewhere at MIT. The people you meet online when you're young and foolish. Now I'm old and foolish. It's much better. Wait.
Is
maybe
it?
not.
I was going to ask you about your shirt, and now I have to go change mine because I spilled something.
Uh-oh.
How come you're not wearing your collar?
Oh, I suppose I'm not. Because I'm in Washington D.C. and it's 90 freaking degrees outside, and I want to wear shorts. And I didn't actually think about what I was wearing when I logged on. So
I forgive you, Father.
okay.
Super important.
I just wanted to say I forgive you, Father, because
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I
I
accept
like
it. I receive it. I receive the forgiveness from Jacob, who has no authority whatsoever to give it. But that's fine.
That's good. I like it. No authority whatsoever to give it. I love it. It's still a gift. So, well accepted. Yes, Jacob, that is why you do not have a girlfriend. You don't have enough good scars. You need a scar on
Yeah.
your head. Like, if you had a scar on your head, look at Harry Potter. He had a scar on his head. Super popular.
See, I was at a Boy Scout camp out, and I was sawing a piece of wood, and the saw slipped and got me right there, 4 stitches.
Ooh, that's actually pretty much how I cut my. Except it was a chainsaw.
Oh boy, yeah, you're lucky.
And meets chainsaw blade. So it turns out, chainsaw blades take large chunks of whatever they hit, That's what they're designed to do. And if what they hit is your hand, they will do that to your hand.
Yeah. There's a reason they didn't give us 7th graders chainsaws. And that's because we could do enough damage with handsaws. Easily.
Yeah.
Easily do enough damage with handsaws. So
I got all the parts for the gas chainsaw the other day, and I was out there this morning, and I made some carburetor adjustments, and I was all excited, and then I was like, oh, the chain's loose. The chain tightening system on the saw is completely broken now. And I'm like, what is going on with this saw? Like, this is insane. So pissed. So now both my chainsaws are broken, and I have a tree in my driveway that I want to get rid of. I need a chainsaw.
Trade-off cost business.
No. Last minute post on the Discord server. That's the only reason. Literally. Like, Michelle posted a video, and I watched the video, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Oh, wait, that goes right in. And I, like, last minute. Elizabeth, you're back.
I missed you, Mark. And
Well,
the
we missed you
guys.
too. Father Eric posted an article with this crazy alleged, what was he, a theologian or whatever?
He was
in
a
Italy.
theologian at San Anselmo in Rome.
Right.
Which is the Benedictine college, and it's where you go for liturgy. And he was wrong about everything he said about liturgy.
He was.
He had crazy communist highs and communist haircut. So
Yes, and
Just-
he was a progressive, and I have some friends who literally returned from Italy yesterday, like they landed yesterday, and I was like, I know people in Italy, we can get this guy whacked, because we need to, and
Your Honor, I had no idea he would actually do it.
and then I think it was Sally was saying, well, yeah, but Elizabeth, she wouldn't even, and I'm like, I wouldn't even think of Elizabeth. She might be in Italy too. We've got 2 assassins. It's great.
Oh, I get to be an assassin?
You could be.
Oh my gosh. Now, the real problem is that where's Sally Joe?
She's around. I think she's busy. She does this thing called taking care of a 5-year-old. I don't know why,
Oh.
but
So anyway, I want to talk about the spiral. Is anybody in on this?
what spiral? Which one?
Any old spiral.
Any spiral.
No,
Okay.
because why does no, I'm really interested. Maybe Father Eric knows. Why does Dr. McGilchrist see reality as being spiral-like? I just don't get it. I'm trying to understand why some people like this idea. To me, it's
Because they don't understand fractal math and
right.
practicality.
They don't understand practical.
Yeah, if
Thank
you
you.
map a fractal and you smooth it, it's a spiral. If you take a self-similar fractal and the key to fractal math is actually fractions. Like that's what it means. So it turns out, right? So the way to map a coastline is instead of saying the coastline of 1, you say it's 1.3, 5, 6, 7, whatever, you add a bunch of numbers. It's the stuff after the period, right? The fractional portion that makes the coastline map. And so if you squeeze that back to a whole number, you get a spiral.
I don't
Keep going.
understand any of that, but it sounds
I
good.
know, but Father Eric, help me because I'm really serious about this. Keep going, Mark. So what's that mean?
So it means that when you sort of come to the, we'll say, unconscious conclusion that the world is a self-similar fractal, and you don't know like what fractals are or how fractal math works, and fair enough, like it's not easy stuff. I've got a couple books on it. Took me a long time. But you will come to a spiral because that's the closest smooth version of self-similarity.
And self-similarity means?
Self-similar
I understand
fractals,
it means fractality, right?
No. There's 2 types of fractals. There's regular fractals that don't repeat, and then there's fractals that repeat, like the Mandelbrot set, Benoit Mandelbrot, that repeats. That's a
The
self-similar
Sierpinski
fractal.
triangle is simpler.
Oh, it repeat. Keep going.
Right. So self-similar fractals repeat over time. So if you keep doing the math long enough, the same pattern appears and the same sequence goes over and over again, right? That's a self-similar fractal. Not all fractals are like that. So that for self-similar fractals, which is what the world is, I know Jonathan Peugeot has a little technical glitch, right? He says fractality. It's like, no, it's self-similarly fractal. That's the difference. That looks like a spiral if you smooth it over. If you do simpler math, you'll get a spiral effect.
Oh, so we could say it's a rough approximation. But
Yes. If you look at a rough approximation of self-similar fractality, you'll get a spiral. Yep.
Really?
That's exactly what you'll get.
Wow, well, that kind of makes sense for him then. So we can call it a rough
Yep.
approximation. Of
Right.
That,
And
that makes sense
what
then
you would
because
get,
keep going.
well, let me just explain this real quick. What you would get is a spiral that starts at a certain size and either gets bigger or smaller and then goes back to the original size. That's what you would get in an approximation of a self-similar fractal. So it wouldn't be like a spiral of the same size. It would be a spiral that grew and then shrunk back down to the same size and repeated. That would be a self-similar
Wow.
fractal approximation. That's what that would look like.
Wow, that's cool.
It is cool,
That's
actually.
real. It's super cool. And
Yeah.
and it's super cool. It really helps me tremendously because I've been arguing. Well, he didn't really like me saying anything about it because I'm just this silly blonde-haired Canadian, who God knows does she ever really say anything, right? And so, but I've always I've always thought his idea of it being a spiral was somewhat crude, and I've always said so. So this explains it, because he actually was not really thinking about fractals even when he wrote his books. I would say it wasn't. I think he listened to Pajot, and that's when he started talking with that kind of language. So this is really interesting, and that's really helpful to understand that, because I've never could understand how it could be spiraling. It just doesn't make it. What about you, Father Eric? Can you see reality ever that way? It never seems to me that that's the way reality is seen.
Did we lose Father Eric?
No, he's there. I see him.
Quiet.
I'm really not sure what Dr. McGilchrist means.
Well, he says that as you go along in his idea is that as you go along in life, that you actually, rather than things being circular, that it's actually spiraling, because he says you go to a higher level, and right there I go Gnosticism. But yeah. I do, and I think that is
the problem with saying you go to a higher level is the assumption that there's only one direction, it's only up, and you can never move back down. And that's just wrong.
Yeah, it's just,
I don't know what to tell people.
Wrong.
Like, that's ridiculous.
I agree. Yeah,
but that's part of the lie of progressivism, which of course I haven't
Right. And the lie of living in this world, actually, everybody, it seems like everybody thinks that you're going up, and that you're somehow at some other, that somehow you've gleaned something actually from going in that direction per se, and that just seems like total nonsense to me. And so,
and it's the assumption that because something is possible that it will happen. It's like, well, it's possible that as you live you'll get better, but most people as they live they get worse. Like most drug addicts do not become undrug addicts, or they actually die of drug overdoses. I don't know what to tell you about how easy this is to figure out. So
and sometimes we become cockier the older we get, or fatter, or whatever it is that we're suffering from, right?
Most old people, the stereotype is that they dig in, right? There's what is it, Grumpy Old Men, right? There's the two movies like that, right? That you see a sequel to that movie. That's most people, guys. Most people aren't progressing in the way you claim. They're actually getting worse, right? They're digging down because their cognitive capacity is going down. I have a video on cognitive load now, thank goodness. It's this ridiculous progressive lie assumption that people make that is damaging the world.
Absolutely, because then if you've got that as a paradigm or as a schema for yourself, like, well, anything goes then, right? Like you can say anything if that's the way you're seeing. So it struck me as very, very peculiar at the time. So we'll see where it goes. But
Ixnon has a question. Let me just try this. Is it possible that the pattern should be an orbit and not a spiral?
An orbit.
I mean, whoops, Father Eric left. The problem is that, there's lots of models that work and map perfectly well. And this is what confuses people. They get confused by the fact that there's more than one model that maps. Maps are not territories. That's where people get confused. The map for the territory confusion is that confusion. Yes, it is helpful to look at things in terms of orbits sometimes instead of spirals. Also, you will notice, if you go out on the internet, you'll see a little picture of the orbits of the planets as spirals, because you change the perspective from the sun, where things orbit, to what can you change? The center of the galaxy, right? Or another galaxy. And all of a sudden, planets don't orbit the sun, they spiral the sun, right? Because orbit and spiral are functions of perspective, and perspective alone. Nothing else changes. That's why perspective is super important, and that's why the postmoderns get rid of it, or at least try to, or tell you can. And that's why they're able to manipulate you, which again, I have a video on. That's my socialism is evil video.
Nice comment on perspective, Mark. Because perspective is actually Well, I did miss you. I hate to say it, but I did miss you because you're just so brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
But you're just an exceptional person, and this is such a wonderful opportunity for people to be able to interact with you. I think you're amazing to do it. Like, my compliments, my sincere compliments. And I'm not a nice person, as you know.
I have witnessed this personally in person. Yes.
But I really like that idea of perspective, because perspective is tied into context, right? Without perspective,
right.
you're never gonna get context, man. You
Right.
can't, and that's what they do too.
Perspective, context determines material for real. That's the observer problem in physics, right? Right. And so now all the objects change as the result of those two things, right? Or they
Right.
can, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they can. Yes, all object. I'm going to do a video on that. I'm going to do it this week or this coming week, I think. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. There's a video on that actually it's Ethan's concept, not mine, but I'm going to do that one. Yeah, you like Ethan. No, he told me the story a while back, and I'm like,
I love you.
That is so freaking brilliant. I am totally going to do a video on that.
What did he say? Come on, tell me. Just one little idea. What did he say?
It's the chair in the cabin in the woods.
Say that again.
The wooden chair in the cabin in the woods. And the question is, what's the chair? And what you do is, it's the same cabin, it's the same woods, and just change the context. And then it's not a chair. So in one scenario, it's a chair. In another scenario, it's wood for the fire. Right?
Right. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're cold, you don't need to sit. You need to burn the damn chair. And so it's not a chair anymore because you're cold. Right. So you can change the context and your perspective. My perspective is I'm cold. Or you can use it for wood to heat your food instead of yourself.
Oh my gosh, but this, that is so brilliant because it ties in absolutely with attention and the critical, like, it cannot be overstated, the critical centering power of attention. And so we, without, that takes a lot, Mark. That takes a lot of energy and time and practice and ritual, I would say.
Well, you have to know about it. And the postmodern project is to make sure you don't notice it. And then they can hijack it, right? And this is why my socialism is evil video is, I think, so good, because it highlights that this is the trick they're playing. It's a very clear trick. They're telling you don't need government, but actually government just refers to something that is not optional in the world, which is the allocation of resources that don't belong to a single person. The father is the governor of the family, right? For a reason, not always, but almost always, right? But then the thing above the family, you need a governor for, whatever that is. It could be the mayor of a city, right? It could be the town council, right? There's different forms of governance or government, right? And most of them have been tried and don't work, by the way, so that's good to know, right? And then the trick is they tell you that doesn't need to exist. And then what happens is you run into what's called the tragedy of the commons, which is a made up situation that is stupid. And
well, then you can do anything once you mesmerize people into vain imagining that attention isn't what creates reality. Then the door's wide open.
If attention doesn't,
you're doomed. You're doomed.
Right. And if attention doesn't create reality, that means reality is pre-existing. That's objective material reality. That's the OMR that I talk about.
Right.
So and you can get at the OMR the other way, right? You can come at it from science. And science is there's an objective material reality. This is Sam Harris all day long. He says this constantly. It's like, there's no objective material reality, bro, because your interaction with the things around you changes them. So it doesn't pre-exist you.
Right.
Parts of it pre-exist you, right? Sure. Like the rock was there before you. Yes. But if you throw the rock, it has a very different impact on the world than if you don't pick it up and throw it.
And the rock wouldn't have been the same anyway.
The rock wouldn't have been the same.
Anybody who knows rocks Man, but this is so good. What Ethan
But-
said and what you're focusing on. This is
Well, but that's-
absolutely good.
But that's John Vervaeke's relevance realization. Jonathan Peugeot's the world is attention and relevance realization are the same statement. Exactly.
In what way? So what? How? Oh, is John Vervaeke really saying that? Do you think?
Yeah, he doesn't know that, but he's talking about the exact same concept.
Yeah, but it's got a bit of an odor to it that seems a bit not right somehow. I don't know how to explain.
No, because the scientific frame is foolish. In order for relevance realization to work the way John wants it to work, there has to be an objective material reality. And in science, there is an objective material reality, but that's an illusion created by a bunch of assumptions.
Yeah.
Einstein said God doesn't play dice with the universe. Maybe listen to Einstein. He's probably smarter than you. I don't know. Like, and then therefore, what that means is that, right? Like there's an order to the universe that we are discovering, not creating.
Right.
And that's the difference between postmodernism and insanity. Like, there's an order to the universe, not there's a pre-existing universe. That's not the same thing. There's an order to the universe, or maybe a set of self-similar fractal patterns to the universe. Right.
Oh, Mark, it's so good. Yeah.
And then that's what you're interacting with. And you can do that poorly or you can do that well, right? And that would depend on the story that you're telling yourself and that's being told, right? And then if you tell a good story, on average, maybe not for you, because maybe you'll get eaten by lions, because good Christians should be eaten by lions. Maybe it won't work for you, but it'll work past you. And past you is bigger than you. Like things that happen after your death are necessarily bigger than you because they're the sum total of all the things you contributed to plus everything that proceeds after you. So maybe being part of a story that sort of accounts for you now, and which is important because a lot of we'll say Protestant sort of heretical sects don't, right? But if it accounts for you now and what goes beyond you, then it's a really good story, and it'll perpetuate the species indefinitely. And so it doesn't conflict with evolutionary thought at all, and that's super important. Like understanding that there's no conflict between science and religion. It just doesn't exist. It's all
no. Anybody who does any science knows that it's some dweeb like, excuse me, like what's his face? Sam just made up some stuff so he could be original, but not. So that he can make a living and make lots of money and get attention. It was just an attention-getting thing. He reminds me of some little kid who's 3 years old and they've just poked their mother in the butt for the 10th time, and he knows he's an idiot, but everybody thinks it's funny or interesting, and so there he is. He's so he has zero authenticity. He doesn't believe a word he says ever. He's a scam artist. He's like,
he's a snake oil salesman.
Snake oil. Yes, he's exactly that. He even talks that way. You can actually see the snake oil. I'm sorry, it's not very nice, but you can see it oozing out of his mouth when he speaks. You can see it. Literally see it. I know.
The guys on PsyOp Cinema. I listened to PsyOp Cinema recently. I forget which one of theirs, but it was good. They just berated Sam Harris, and I was like, man, even I wouldn't go that far, but I agree. I want to read this thing from Matthew. Attention creates reality. It's near as my recent obsession with self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, Matthew, that's more or less how it works.
I don't know if we understand. Well, you would, but attention is a really tricky business in today's world where everything's topsy-turvy, right? It's it's quite a quest.
It explains everything, right?
Yeah.
People with different attentions are trying to manifest different things, and that causes a flood.
Right.
This is why I get frustrated. These guys, they come up with these complicated explanations, and I'm like, no,
it's
bro.
Really simple.
I know. It's really easy. It's Sally
easy.
Joe. The coward odor. It's a form of the spinelessness. Yes, that's Sam Harris for sure.
Nicely said, Sally Joe.
Maybe we should sell a spine shirt. Ooh, I like that idea.
That is a great idea. It could go along with posture and Jordan Peterson stand tall.
Yeah,
Um,
let's
let's
do
do
that.
it. You'll
Let's
be
get on
pleased
that.
to know I'm taking dancing lessons, by the way.
Oh, good.
And the first thing they taught me was posture. Do you know
Posture,
how
yeah.
cool dancing lessons are? I suggest that if we all took dancing lessons, that the universe would right itself again. It's so much
Probably.
fun, and it's seriously. I think we should all do
Participatory
that immediately.
practice. It's a participatory practice, right? And it's poetic.
It's
There's
and
poetics all over it.
you're integrating your being, right? Because it's all
Yep,
different.
it's all
movements
integration.
beneath.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous thing. Then you get the music on top of it.
Matthew Parlato. Vervaeke doesn't believe in objective reality. He says that, but he does. If any criticism holds water, he's starting on the left brain systematic framing. Yeah, which requires OMR. Your left brain doesn't work without objectivity. But even that he admits, yeah, he says I'm a cognitive scientist, right? But admitting that means you believe in objective reality. Like there's no way around it. Like you can't do science without objective reality. It's not possible. That's the problem. That's the trick. So Vervaeke says a lot of things. Like he says he believes in emanation, but I've never heard him describe it. I mean, he does have a short form definition that's clearly wrong, but like he'll spend 20 minutes talking about emergence and he'll spend 3 seconds saying the word emanation. That's a hint. It's an asymmetrical.
He's dealing with his own issue. It's not kind to say, but he's dealing with his own issues.
Oh, clearly.
It's clear.
Yeah,
it's clear.
Once you
And
hear his
I love him
traumas,
dearly,
you're
but,
like, oh, you're just trying to resolve your traumas.
yeah,
I
he
give
is.
him
And
credit.
bless his heart.
He's top in his field and recognizes the existential embodied practices of the right brain is necessary and imperative. Yeah, but he doesn't do anything about it, Matthew. Like he hides all that work. It's good work. Awakening from the meaning crisis should be called awakening to the meaning crisis because there's no solution there. Okay. And the awakening from the meaning crisis work is hidden on his channel. It's the meditation series. Sorry, but it is. And that's not all of it, but you know.
Maybe he should do
no conflict at
dancing
all.
lessons instead of meditate. Maybe he should go do dancing lessons and
Well,
learn the
That's not a bad idea. We experimented with so much stuff on the Discord server back in the day.
Did you do that? Did you do dancing?
We did dancing. Yeah, they did ecstatic
right.
dance, though. I don't think that was good. We needed to do more formal dancing, but it's hard to
Yeah,
do
but
on Discord.
But formal dancing teaches you everything. And also, Sally Jo, I'm sure would know this anyway, but it definitely embodies the masculine and feminine principles for sure.
Right,
It's amazing. It's
Would have to.
phenomenal.
Right.
It has
All
to. Of course it
participation
does.
is going to do that, right?
Yeah,
Well,
for
and
sure.
And you'll notice, like the Baptists don't like dancing, and they don't like
Oh.
Mary, and they don't like the divine feminine, and they don't like symbolism. And oh yeah, it's all connected, isn't it? Everyone who throws out Mary is going to throw out dancing.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's all the same thing. That's why everyone's like making up these complicated explanations. Oh yeah, it's really simple, guys. You guys are making the world real hard, and it's real simple. Let's read some more comments here. Sell a spine shirt with a small board you can use to brace your back. There we go.
Good idea for your posture. Yeah.
Sally's already on it. She said she was on it.
Oh, I bet she is.
Matthew, dynamical relating. I don't know, Matthew. I don't know what dynamical relating means. Some of this holds water. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
Masculine and feminine dance. All participation to be proper has to embody the feminine and the masculine. There's no choice.
Absolutely. Right. Or you're so we need I'm sorry, we need estrogen. We need estrogen desperately in our society today. I'm serious about it. Like you might sound like some YouTube
not
lady.
that way. We need women stop trying to be powerful and to be
well
precious.
That's what I mean. We need estrogen because when a woman is
then
feminine,
men have something to do, right? Then men go, ooh, something precious to protect. Og like protect. Og smash all things not, threaten preciousness, right? Og build house for precious. Keep precious safe.
Mark, you need to. This is important. I'm really on this bandwagon right now. Estrogen, of course, is generated. The more feminine you are, the way you dress, the way you look at yourself, the way you tend to yourself, creates enormous amounts of estrogen. It creates the polarity between the masculine and feminine, like this we've got all the research on the hormones now, and it's obvious that that is one of the fundamental problems, that
But
women
it's not.
no longer
But that
understand what a woman
that
is
doesn't
actually,
right. But that's
and
tied
the
into
man
my that's tied into my greater theory. Let me catch up on comments though, and then Sally Joe, I've never danced. Really, dancing is evil. Lol.
Sally
Right.
Joe and I take lessons, Sally Joe.
Mark, Baptists. Yes, yes. Baptists are very funny. That's Sally Joe. Footloose. Yes, Footloose is real. Holy Rollers, look them up. Real. Was not allowed because it's sexually provocative, right? Well, that's how they suppress the divine feminine. That's how the Puritans suppressed the divine feminine.
And then you
Oh,
don't
yeah, I
get
got this
any.
whole. I got a whole
Sorry.
thesis about this. I went over it the other day with my buddy Bruce. I can drive a 4-wheel drive with grace. Yes, you can, Sally. That is true. I can confirm this personally. We need a version of the Virginia Reel where you can change partners. You can do that. That's not a problem.
What do you mean? What's that comment mean? I don't get it.
The Virginia Reel is a type of dancing.
Yeah, I know that, but
And-
what about the changing partners bit? I don't get it. Like, what's the joke? I just missed whatever.
No, it's not a joke. He wants to change partners. You do change partners at the Virginia Reel.
Well, you mean
So
he wants to
you
change
can.
his wife for another wife? Is that what he meant? I don't know
Hopefully
what-
not. No. You want to learn. You want to. The purpose of dancing in America in the say 17 and 1800s, in the weird Protestant sects that allowed it, and I think most of Europe, although I'm a little fuzzy on that European history, all medieval dancing, right, is all about meeting different women, like trying different pairings in the
right
village.
in the
That's
circle
what it
or
is.
whatever. Yeah.
It's 100. It's 100% that. I mean, it's more than that.
Wow.
100% also trying different pairings.
Right, and that's once. Oh my gosh, thank
Right.
you, Mark. You're too. Sally Joe, look at this. Look at this. This is really important.
Elizabeth, I don't know why everybody doesn't see this way. That's why I'm always confused by you people. Like, what all the I can't track all the things people don't see that are all actually the same thing. But anyway, Sally Joe, you can't just go feminine in a vacuum unprotected.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, no,
maybe
yeah, you
you
can.
have
You have
to.
to be bold,
I don't
Sally Joe. You have to be bold, Sally Joe. One woman can change a lot of men around. I'm a perfect example. I've got all
One
the
woman-
Italian men just where I want them right now that I understand how hormones work. I'm serious.
Yeah, right. One woman
I'm
can
serious.
manage 10 men easily. One man
you're-
cannot manage 10 men.
But you need to understand the patterns, and if you don't understand the patterns, you might as well just be a postmodern, lesbian, whatever. Like, you might as well, because if you don't understand how the polarization works between the masculine and feminine, and how the hormones actually, the science research backs it up. If you don't understand that, you don't have a hope in hell. But if you understand it, it works. Oh.
When the feminine is exposed, well, don't expose it. It brings out danger as much as possible protection. No, you don't expose it. Like, you keep making this mistake, Sally.
No,
Don't
you just
expose it.
are the
point.
exemplar. You just
You
you're
point
the
in the
exemplar.
back, and everything happens, and you don't have to expose anything.
But then
That's-
there's the other side of the masculine feminine problem that I realized, because when I left Italy, then everything went to hell because I was no longer in a Catholic country, and that's true. As soon as I got on the Air Canada plane, I was acting out my estrogen full feminine side. Oh my gosh, if Sally had been there, she would have said, "There you go." The guy tried to eat me alive. Seriously, tried to eat me alive, and I was just being my normal estrogen feminine self. And men in North America typically cannot stand it. And I might even include somebody like, some of these people like Peterson. I don't think they can stand the real feminine. I don't think so.
Probably not. They probably don't know how to deal with the divine feminine as such. But I mean, that's because they don't have a story for it. So the thing, the controversial theory, Elizabeth, that I'll share because you're here, that I don't think I've talked about this publicly at all, but I'll take a chance. I like Peterson's talk about birth control, but I think what he's actually missing is the second order effects of birth control. Once it spreads, and once it's one generation after the spread. Because if you do the math that way, then the math works too, which I'm not a fan of math, but also like it helps, right? And so like if you do the math from the 60s, hormonal birth control, and you imagine a scenario, and I'm not going to make a statement about this, I'll let you guys decide as the audience whether or not this is feasible. But the way I conceive it is we live in a world where hormonal birth control has an effect, which of course it has to, right? Otherwise it wouldn't do what it claims to do, right? then the other effects are things like you don't get the full force of the cycle of the divine feminine or the divine feminine itself. Well, when you grow up with maybe a mother who was on birth control, then off, and then back on again, you don't get the full force of the cycle. So you don't understand cycles as a man or a woman. So the young daughters don't either. Right. Well, and it's more important, the young daughters, but you also don't know how to deal with that. So when you come up against somebody with it, you're like, whoa, dog, I don't even know what to do, because you've patterned after your mother. And if your mother hasn't embodied the full force of the cycle at both ends, you don't know how to deal with that. You don't have a map for that, man. That's like, whoa, danger. Right. But for women, not only do they not know how to deal with it, but they don't cast it out into the world. And so society gets flatter and flatter and flatter and flatter and flatter and spreads out more and more and more and more and more, right? And then everybody tries to be more masculine.
And yeah, like I'm sorry, but North America is full of males. There's just so many. It's mainly males. There's not many women, but many women left. I'm not joking. Like, we should do a picture of it, Sally Joe. We basically got a continent full of men, and it's true.
But yeah, but look at the postmoderns.
Feminized males. We've got the opposite.
Look at the postmoderns, right? They're basically evil, degenerate males, right? So it's all male thought, and it's all me, and it's all top-down power from above with no good definition of power. Their power is something like force or threat of force, which is usually what words are: threat of force, not actual force. That's why if you stand up to leftists, they fold, because they're threatening force, but they don't have any. So whatever.
Yeah, because nobody's. I really do believe that the postmodernists could not believe that anybody would take them seriously. They were playing. I think they were just playing intellectual games. I really do. Like, they got serious about it because that's what French intellectuals do. But I think they were.
I agree.
Couldn't believe that anybody would buy into their abstract theoretical cafe smoking ideas.
And you can tell right, but you could tell they cognitively overloaded their listeners. It's really easy, because the first thing people say is reading Derrida is hard.
I know.
Maybe that's because he wrote nonsense and you fell for it.
It doesn't make any sense, because
nobody ever considers that. My problem is nobody considers the possibility that that's true.
Yeah, I
agree.
Like,
maybe Derrida wrote nonsense on purpose, knowingly, and you fell for it. Did you ever consider that, Mr. Smarty Pants? Because every time I ask these super smart people, and they are super smart people, like, can you distill Derrida? They can't. And fair enough. But like, nobody can.
It doesn't follow any pattern. Yeah, I know. It's
nobody. Zero people.
I agree, Mark, 100. But seriously, if you've ever lived in France.
Yeah. That's a hint that he wrote garbage on purpose. Maybe not on purpose. Maybe he
no. You need.
I agree with you. Knowing French people, he did it on purpose. But
no, if you don't understand French intellectuals, then you don't get these postmodernists. They do not. They're playing games. That's what French intellectuals do.
You violated a rule of the channel. It's reprehensible. It's reprehensible French intellectuals, because there's no other type. You've got to be precise in your speech, just like Peterson said.
Oh my gosh! But it's a cultural misunderstanding. Nobody understands what French intellectuals are all about.
I agree.
Don't take them so seriously. Like, it's just like they're really they're just kind of like Sam. They're just like Sam. They're just playing a little game, right? And and they're a little cooler. Like, Sam's not as cool as those French intellectuals. Anything French can be quite cool.
The problem with the U.S.
I mean, they made croissant. Come on. That's cool.
There you go. That's cool. But the problem with the U.S. is that it's desperately trying to be Europe, right? Because we don't have a history. So we're desperately trying to get back to our history. And the problem, somebody asked me this, I forget who and how long ago it was. It wasn't that long ago, it was a few months ago. But they asked me, like, well, why Canada? Why is there Vervaeke and Peterson and Peugeot, right? All out of Canada. And I said, well, Canada's they're caught between Europe and the US very much. And so they are the stress point. They should be the tip of the spear. That's what should happen, like
I
naturally.
agree.
That's
I
why
agree.
Canada's in that state, because they're trapped between these two forces, right? One with the history that's pulling them backwards, and fair enough, it should, right? And one that's just, I mean, the U.S. is a juggernaut of progress, right? I mean, we're not the country that made the most progress in the shortest time in history. That's actually Germany post the middle of the Great War, because there's only one war, but right, like that. Well, actually, it's continuation. Like they were a juggernaut for. I mean, that's how World War I happened. They were a juggernaut then too.
1900, 1930s, 1970s.
Yeah, they did it again in the 1930s. Yeah, 30 years
That's
later.
what they do, because
Right.
they
And all of that seems to be Bismarck. He's just like a great guy in some ways, but really kind of destroyed the world for real. And the more you dig into Bismarck's history, it's like, man, this guy was a disaster for the world. He really was. Smart guy, but also a complete catastrophe.
no balancing of things, right? Just like,
Well,
crazy.
Yeah, I mean the collapse of the Prussian Empire, just it's not good. Like it's just a continuation of the beheading of the kings and all that, and it's just not. I mean, maybe Adam and I will just.
Yeah,
We got to
come
do
on,
Russian Revolution. We got to do Russian Revolution next.
There was the French Revolution. If you've studied your history, why would you take postmodernists seriously if you really
I
know
have a
anything
video
about
on
the
that
French
with
Revolution?
Adam. We did a wonderful treatment of
God.
the French Revolution. Also, Patriarchy is Good. That video that I did with Father Eric and Adam. Oh yeah, the French Revolution causes every bad thing in the world, including feminism. Bad from the start. Bad seed, bad fruit, bad seed. Sorry, guys.
Feminism
Sorry.
did come
Watch the video.
much of feminism. You're absolutely right about that. And recently too, much of feminism came out of France.
The woman who wrote the original paper that everybody else used saw the beheading of the French king. She was there. She saw it, and she was self-conflicted. She wrote that she was oh, he died so regally. I feel bad. It's like, you psychopath, you crazy. And she wrote, to be fair, she wrote the paper a year before that, but like she wrote it in the midst of the French Revolution. She was an English woman too, but she wrote it. She was in, and she had to be spirited out of Paris because like they were gonna put her on the guillotine. And she wrote the first feminist paper, and then the whole Mary Wollstonecraft.
Oh, right.
Fascinating history, right? Mother to Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. Wow. Oh yeah, no, the connections are like, once you realize these things are connected, you're like, whoa, what? Why are we listening to any of these people? They're all lunatics, clearly lunatics. Clearly bad fruit all over the place. Nothing but bad fruit. Bad seeds, bad fruit. Hate to say it, but also look at
but you don't have a narrative if you don't understand that you're dealing, well, mainly not just narrative, but images, right? If you don't have the right images, you're going to the same church and you're looking at the same images. That does something to your perceptual system. There's no doubt about it. And you're listening to the same stories.
Even if it's wrong, it aligns you to people you haven't met, which allows for a greater method of cooperation.
Well, yeah, because at least you're seeing, it doesn't even matter if you're seeing them, you're all seeing them slightly differently because that's how we are. Right. But you're looking at the same damn images everywhere you go. And what I find really fascinating is the same damn stories too. So what you're basically getting out of all of that is there is a grid. There's a grid. Back to your order.
Yeah.
There's a grid. There's order. And so what you're getting is not the particulars. You're getting that underlying grid, and that's what unifies everybody. Obviously, because at least you can still you've absorbed that narrative and those images. And what's the reason I'm really strong about this? When I went to my little island, there's these old people who tell these stories that are real. And it's really cool when you start listening to them and you wonder, they all come from the ancient stories that they heard in church, right? They all come. So they're all variations of those stories. And I've been reading the Kalevala, which is the collection of Finnish tales. It's amazing. It inspired Tolkien, right? And it's the best it's rivaling Dante. So for me to say that this is something it's an amazing
Wow.
collection. Yeah, and it's written by this, but the translation that is necessary to have because it's unbelievably beautiful. And it really maps onto McGilchrist as well. But there's a translation by Friberg, Friberg. It is one of the most incredible pieces of literature I've ever read. It's ancient. And you know what I figure, Mark? Tell me. The Finnish, obviously, they have zillions of hours of night, right? And I figured they, of all people, had time to
Yep.
say their stories
That's right.
over and over and over again. So these have been
Yep.
refined for
Refined.
centuries,
For
over much
distributed
more
cognition.
time, for
We
sure.
don't
And so
we
you
don't
just
have
get,
any more distributed cognition. It's being stolen by this stupid thing that keeps
you have
interrupting
no
you every
idea how
5
little
minutes.
we have. When you come from anyway, what's really interesting is these stories and the Kalevala, as well as the stories that these people were telling on the island. They're all coming from that common medieval vision that Peugeot talks about all the time. You wouldn't
Right.
believe these are people who can't, and I don't call them illiterate because I think that's a stupid false category. They neither read nor write. Two of these people, the things
Right.
they say. There's
Right.
an Oxford grad who's been writing about them. He said they say the most profound things. They
Yep.
say the most profound
Yep.
things because they are embedded in the
Right, they're
narrative
participating in it.
of centuries. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Well, this
yeah.
idea that's hi, Matthew, by the way. But this idea
Hi,
that
Matthew. I don't know you.
like Cale Zeldin's been putting out, like, oh, you need to read old books. It's like, burn all the books. You need to participate in your community, and you
Right.
don't need the books. You know
Right.
how I know this? Like, this is my genius. You ready for my genius move? Do you know how I know you don't need the books? We didn't have them in the past, and we're here. Like, it's not that hard. Like, I don't. Like, everyone, like,
Yeah.
oh, these books. You don't. You couldn't have. That's not even a possible configuration of the world. The people before you didn't have the damn books, and they're fine. They built you. Like, what do you mean you need this stuff? You definitely do not.
I absolutely. It's all community because these people still live in community, right? Because when you're on
That's
a
right.
little island, with the god of the winds blowing there all the time, you're pretty isolated for long periods of time. And guess what? You're living together. Like it's the way it always was. You're restricted by the necessities of survival, frankly. And
Exactly.
and they still live that way. They still live in community. They still care for one another.
Right.
So you don't really need to talk about time and attention, all this other stuff, because they're living it every day. It's so beautiful.
Right. That's the problem. We used to live it, and now we don't. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, and we're in trouble. Yeah.
I loved your little I don't want to say controversial alternative your fringe theory your cutting edge theory on the hormones and what is it, birth control. So that's right up I eat up that stuff. That's beautiful. But I want to at risk, obviously I don't want to be offensive in any of that stuff, but at
we
risk
like
of
being offended. At least I do.
at risk of pushing my own kind of radical hypothesis that can easily be spun into darker, nefarious ways. But that's obviously not what the spirit of either of y'all or this channel or myself is. But anyways, I have a kind of a controversial one on what you just what was your name? Excuse me, I don't catch a name in your
That's
title there.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Okay. So Elizabeth just mentioned on the environmental circumstances and kind of constraints and obstacles that we had to deal with. I have this radical, I call it a controversial hypothesis that if you kind of take it's not quite this simple in black and white, but bear with me. If you took a kind of a dichotomous view on metaphysics and in a wisdom meta narrative of like the East and West, kind of this more implicit, illusory kind of giving up, looking at the world versus this very cherished, creative, generative, moving upward and forward kind of worldview of the West. And like I said, you can kind of draw a line real simply to more racy and edgy political narratives, and that's not what I'm going for. It's not what I'm going for. But I want to look at the correlation of those metaphysical frameworks and narratives with climate on kind of like a more tropical, abundant diversity of life versus more the moderate, temperate, having to struggle, having to really cherish, the tools and chase down the game. The game would be more versus just the world of plenty. And so things and tools and creations can be let go more. There's not as much of a value, can easily be slipped through the fingers, as the tropical realm that we would have been interfacing would have been just a little bit more just a little bit more abundance there. I don't want to be too aggressive or too broad strong with my metaphor here, but then in the case of, like, more moderate, dealing with the winters and the tougher in the grazing and migrating flocks and stuff like that, just having to kind of struggle a little bit more, thus focusing on and cherishing a little bit more of that man's creation and man's progress. I don't know if any of that lands, and I don't know if I've shared that with anybody else till this point. I think I put it down somewhere.
Yeah, well, life is harsher. Like, we're living this hyper, yeah, but it's falsely comfortable, right? I don't know. I don't know if
Push back
that's
for sure. Like I said, that's on the edge of my thoughts. Like, I'm open for anything you got.
I don't really have anything. The only thing I know is what I've experienced, and people who actually take care of each other in a community, and live honestly. You cannot hide your foibles when you live in a community. It's really cool. Right. So what ends up happening is foibles are allowed to be foibles in a community. Mm-hmm. They're not pathologized. They're just allowed to be part of what makes life interesting. Whereas here, any kind of foibles are like, you're pathologized immediately for being unique in any way. But funnily enough, even though we don't exist as individuals, that is what happens. And so the sword is pointed at you. But what's really interesting is all this moralizing stuff that goes on in the outside world just doesn't happen in a real community, because everybody's effing up all the time.
Right.
So so the reason you go to church to confess your sins, like, it really, really makes sense, because everybody knows that you've been effing the girl beside you at the house where you're living with your wife. Everybody knows that somebody hit somebody over the head and they died. Everybody knows all the stories, folks, and there's no hiding the ugliness of the human shadow. And so it's so liberating, because what it means is all those things that you're pathologized about continually in this world. Like, I was rearranging my luggage because the guy who put it up there put it on the wrong side, and it was an expensive mono suitcase, and I didn't want it wrecked. And some guy made an asshole comment about it. Like, sorry, no. I'm just rearranging my luggage because actually it was expensive, and that's my personal story, and you have no right to be commenting, because it's just my foible that I wanted it put the right side up so that it wouldn't get wrecked, because I cherish the things that I buy. But so foibles are not acceptable. And in fact, you're not allowed to be visible in this outside world. And that's part of the feminine problem too. That's part of the problem about being feminine. If you're feminine and you take care of yourself, you look at yourself in the mirror, contrary to what Peterson says, the more often a woman sits and looks at herself in the mirror, the more estrogen that is produced, period. The more estrogen that she produces, when a man comes close to her, that his testosterone goes up. It's that simple. It's all about hormones, ma'am. So we're pathologized. So if you're an attractive woman in North America, you're pathologized right away. If I'm okay looking. If you're an attractive woman in Italy, everybody's really happy that you've made the effort to look as nice as you can, and they're more than pleased to help you out. So in Italy, if I say, which is what you need to be doing, the feminine needs to ask for assistance and help from the masculine. That's how it works. You ask a man in Italy to help you with anything, and they all of a sudden become knights in shining armor. And I kid you not, like, there can be some slovenly guy walking along the sidewalk and say, "Oh, would you mind helping me with my suitcase?" Oh, all of a sudden, their posture goes up. They don't need Jordan Peterson. They stand straight, and they're honored that you ask them to help, and they'll do it. It's magical. Every woman needs to know this. All you need to say is, "Oh, I need some help," and right away because the testosterone goes shooting through the roof. As soon as a female says to a male, "I need some help,"
Well,
Your
when you, yeah,
testosterone goes up, and so they become knights in shining armor in front,
when
like
you,
these really weird
right,
looking
when you,
guys.
but
And
that's when you give a guy something to do, he becomes the hero.
exactly, yeah,
Right. He's got to
but he
rise to the
does.
occasion.
But it's
Right. Well, and
testosterone. It's testosterone. No
right,
wonder these
right.
men are dying in the
No, it's
basement.
right,
Like,
right.
no wonder. But anyway, the next, so you do that in Canada. So I asked this dweeb to help me with the suitcase. They're not capable. They don't even know. I should have
They
said to
can't
the
do
guy,
it.
I should have said to him, listen, you need some help with your testosterone levels, man. But the
Well,
whole
that's
plane
not
was
gonna.
listening to
Yeah,
me.
he
No,
needs
no.
more. He needs to
Oh,
go
it
to the
might have
gym.
been good. It might have been
He
good.
needs to go to the gym. That's what he needs.
No, he needs to understand the polarization between the masculine and feminine and how testosterone and estrogen works. I think everybody needs to be talking about hormones. That's my basic idea right now.
A little
Everybody
too
needs to be talking
materialistic
about
for
hormones.
me, Elizabeth. A little too
Pardon?
materialistic, but it's a little too materialistic for me. But you
No,
do
it's science,
there is
darling.
an
It's
archetype.
science.
No, there is an archetype, and if you act out the archetype, the physical, the material stuff takes care of itself. But the thing you mentioned there is
Yeah.
important.
Well,
It's
yeah.
acceptance,
But I'm
right?
right about the research.
Yeah. Well, the research is behind the thing. It thinks it's in
Yeah.
front, but
Yeah, but
not.
it's interesting and it's good to.
No,
It's
you're right. You're right.
It's
It's a
good
good
to
way
have
in.
the research because I've got Dante and McGilchrist is providing all the scientific research which
Sure.
supports Dante. So it is important
Right.
actually in my
Right.
personal
No,
opinion.
I don't disagree. That it's important to know
My
that
father
to
was
know
a
that
researcher, Mark, so just be careful.
Right. But the thing you mentioned too was acceptance. And I like what you said about individualism. The problem with individuals, it works both ways. Like if you think you can be an individual, you think other people are individuals too. And now they're in positions. And that's just worse for intimacy. Right. You're just destroying intimacy. I don't know. Did you listen to my second intimacy crisis talk with Catherine?
Would I
I
like
have a new
it?
one. I think so. I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm gonna do a third one with her too. Left that door open. So yeah, I mean, I think, but I think that's what it is when you don't have a healthy divine feminine and divine masculine and the relationship, because that's the important part. Then you're screwed, right? You're going to end up not being able, and you're going to collapse the world into masculine power. And then women are going to try to be men, and men are going to try to be what they think women are when men are dumb, so they don't know what women are. And so, yeah, it's just going to be a mess. It's going to be a complete.
Well, it's
you don't
a
know anything about
horrible
women there.
mess. It's a horrible
You're not
mess. I don't
supposed
even know.
to. And that's the problem. Like this is what I mentioned in my monologue. You're not supposed to. It's not important. Like women are crazy. Good enough, man. Just got to protect them. They can be crazy, and I can just protect them. It's okay. I don't need to understand why they do things. I don't need to. It's not necessary to protect them.
Thank you. Like you can just be like what we are because there's no freaking way any man can even start to understand a woman. Like seriously, there is
all you need to do, honestly, is spend an hour in some random place with Elizabeth, and you realize the futility of trying to understand women. It just immediately becomes obvious to you that you will never be smart enough, no matter how smart you get, to understand anything about women. Because Elizabeth is all over the place. It's beautiful. It's awesome. Also, completely all over the place. I've never met. No, that's not true. I know two other women that are as all over the place as Elizabeth. It's awesome. It's so much fun. And it's great.
Really is fun. It's fun being me. Like it's fun being
I
me.
bet it is. And we have to protect you from yourself because, man, you are this far away from getting wiped out.
I need so many men in my life. I seriously need a lot of men in my life.
You need like an
everywhere I go.
army. You need an army to protect you all the time.
Even on the ship from Naples, when I'm going to my islands, I've got all these men who know me because I go and take the same route all the time, and they take care of me, right? The guy who serves the food, the guy who gives me my room number, they all shake hands and and they're happy to serve this lady.
Give them something to do.
Help.
Yeah,
well, it means they get to be men. They get to be men. They get to help this lady who's all
have
over
a
the
role.
place. Yeah,
Right.
but that's what a man wants. He wants to know what some crazy lady is looking to find or to have. He really is. He wants to do that because like that's all he can do. Because what else are you going to do with a lady? I mean, you know
Right.
what I mean. But yeah, like what
Right.
are you going to do? You gotta You just got to go.
Well, and
with
what else are you going to do
saying.
in the world? Like, if you're not protecting that which is precious, what are you doing? Yeah, you're in mom's basement. Of course you are. You're pretending to protect something precious because it's
Yeah.
a few blips on a screen and it moves. Ooh, pretty.
Yeah, but
It's like, yeah,
women
you're
aren't
3 years
willing to.
old.
They're not willing to admit that they are like I'm probably just the exemplar, right, of the feminine. That
You're
women
the
aren't willing to be
extreme.
like me. Like no, but I'm just my.
Yeah, yeah. Let's catch up on comments real quick. Sally Joe, there are places in the U.S. that are real communities. Yeah, just not typically urban places, right? Well, the
Right,
urbanization
right, right.
is a problem, right? Elizabeth should listen to the intimacy talk even if she doesn't like it. Okay, X-Not. Well, I'm sure she'll
I don't
take
know
that
if I
under
would like.
advisement.
I don't know if I would like it, but
I think you would. Sally Joe, she might. She was outside internet reception for the last few months. Yeah, she might like it. My intimacy
maybe I
crisis, I
should
only have 3 talks. They're all with women because I'm terrified to talk about it without a
did you
woman
do one
present.
with Sally Joe? Then I might listen to it.
No, I'm not going to do one with Sally Joe. That's a bad choice.
Why
It's interesting you say that, Mark. That's interesting you said that about, and I'm sure, I don't know, there might be a grain of truth. Sometimes there's grains of truth, but it's a very common topic on my mind for sure. I brought it up in different conversations. I don't have any recorded, I don't believe, but yeah, the intimacy crisis, this degradation, this mutation and degradation of the connection we had. I mean, just to do an exemplification, when you pointed to your phone and said, no more distributed cognition, my thoughts were, well, there's still a distributed cognition, but it's just this degradation.
It's dead. No, it's
yes,
not degraded. It's dead.
Yeah, that's a better way, right? Yeah, it's all.
Oh
it's all
no,
encoded.
we're afraid of zombies. You're holding one.
Yeah, and then
this
it
is
updates.
a zombie.
It does an update.
This is distilled zombies being transmitted over the air into
It gestures moment to moment to try and be alive, right? It's like, oh, I can
Exactly.
it's very interesting.
That's why that pattern's there. That's where that pattern comes from. Like that pattern's there. The zombie pattern is there. I mean, that's actually how, to some extent, Peugeot and Vervaeke got famous, was talking about zombies, right? That was their way in. Why? Because zombies are real, guy. And then look, I've said it before. Go to Edinburgh, Scotland. And if you don't understand you are surrounded by zombies, you're just missing the world, but you are surrounded by zombies.
Go to Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia. Go to Skid Row in LA. And I just want to highlight too how you just mentioned. I don't know if you did it on purpose or but it's just the way it happened. That's also kind of how Peugeot and JV found each other too. Yeah. It's like not only their way into this deep cultural.
That's how they found each other.
Yeah, right. It's because there's the symbol, right? And this mass pop culture Western. Go ahead.
But the reason why Edinburgh is important is because Edinburgh is seriously one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Like it is gorgeous.
The contrast.
Right. Well, the thing is, when you're there, everyone's looking straight across. Right? And I'm there going like I can't stop moving my head.
Because of the beauty.
Dude, there's a freaking volcano over here. The water's over here. There's a castle on a hill over here.
Yeah,
what is going on?
I may have really screwed up my life. I may have really made a lot of bad decisions. I may not get to do a lot of amazing things, but I think I might be able to squeeze in a trip to Europe. And God bless it if I get to do that. I just want to go see the churches.
Only one place. Go to Edinburgh, Scotland.
Okay.
Go to Italy.
It is amazing.
Yeah, I probably won't be able to do a big fancy, but I could probably do some small scale economical version. And I want to see the churches.
You can go and stay. There's still hostels you can stay in that are cheap. Yeah. All you do is they're just bare bones, right? I think you share a room with 4 other people. They hardly cost anything, even in the big cities. They might be $30 a night or something. You don't need to. It doesn't need to cost a lot of money. People just do it that way now, so everybody thinks that's what you have to do, but you don't. You can go. I go really cheap. I stay at a place in Sicily for $45 a night.
But really nice hotels in Europe are cheap by our standards.
Wow.
The service sucks because it's Europe, but they're really beautiful. They're really beautiful hotels. Oh, Sally Joe basically thinks, Elizabeth, that you should do an intimacy crisis talk response video because it would be amazing.
Cool. I don't know if you'd want to hear it. I'd be swearing a lot, I'm afraid.
Oh, that would be very cool. That would be very cool.
Yeah, but I've got really strong opinions.
Here's also the
thing: is Mark don't like them.
I'm gonna be that guy. Mark's the type of personality that actually needs that healthy pushback, like because
Yeah.
No, it's
he's
not Mark. I think it might be Catherine, actually. I don't think
oh,
Catherine and I
oh
see
well,
eye to eye on a
I don't want
lot
to
of
speak
things.
on. I don't even know if I
But she knows
recognize that name.
Catherine, so you got to be careful.
And
Okay.
I'm like, I read Beatrice, I read Dante, and Beatrice is one fierce woman. Like, she makes even the Irish chieftain ladies look soft. She's so tough. She's got that beautiful, tough feminine that Mark was talking about. Like, she's a force man.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
she puts Dante where he needs to go. Like, every man needs Beatrice. She's changed my life until I found out that. Then I found out about how the feminine and masculine works, and it works. Like, seriously, every woman
Yeah.
needs to be
Yeah.
expressing what she needs to every
Right,
man
but-
around her. I mean it
Right,
seriously.
but they don't. Like the last time I ran into this situation, right? Very, very beautiful young lady. Very beautiful.
I'm so
Right.
excited.
Yes.
Are you getting married?
No, no. She's this is a long
You'd make a great
trail.
husband.
No, no, I was
Mark.
I she went into her car to get this huge printer, 2 hands. Like 2 hands. It's a huge printer, right? And I was like, "Can I help you?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "I'm going to open the door for you anyway." Like, this is not acceptable to me growing up when I grew up. It's not going to happen. Like, my mother's dead. She's looking down. She's going to come back and kill me if I
Right.
don't open the door.
Your mother was
and that
freaking
was
right.
literally the least I could do. And there was no physical way that she could open the door by herself, but she be damned if she wanted my help. And I was like, "You've got to be kidding me." And the other 2 idiots that were with me also did not offer to help. And I'm like, "You both suck."
Oh, I'm so
I will do the
proud
thing.
of you, Mark. You're enacting the true masculine. Like, you're changing the world.
People don't
That's-
like that, Elizabeth, but I agree. I think it's worth it, even though I suffer for it.
Do it
quite
anyway,
greatly.
man. If a man
know,
opens
I
the
do.
door for me, you should see me. I treat him with my most beautiful glance. Trust me. I do. I do. And they're thrilled. They're
If
thrilled.
I could get in front of you when we're together, that would be a miracle. Much less get to open the door. You're so quick. You're always in front, just like
Yeah.
leading the way into chaos.
Into
It's
chaos. yes, no,
glorious.
but I know, but all I know, Mark, is the Italian men really like me. All of them, wherever I go.
I know they
So-
do. I know that. I know
so
why
there's
too.
something
It's
going
not.
on. There's
It's
something
not
going
hard
on
to
there.
know.
And
It's not hard to
and
know.
I don't know, but the I don't know, the North American women really hate me. So go figure. You know why? Because I'm trying to embody the feminine, and they don't like
Well,
it.
yeah, you're better, and they know it unconsciously, and they don't like that because they're being judged, and nobody wants to be judged. I mean, that's part of the individualism. Like, individualism is I don't have to be judged because I'm apart from the world. It's like,
Right.
you're never going to be apart from the world,
Right.
and you're always going to be judged, and you're going to judge yourself, and you don't even realize that. No one's told you that, and fair enough. But also, you're an idiot. Like, yeah, you're going to judge yourself. So you can try to get out of judgment, but it's not going to work. So you need a new
So
plan.
true.
If that's your
So
plan,
true.
you need a new plan. It's that simple.
Yeah, you need to repent, man. You need to repent because hey, you should be thankful.
Confess,
Sorry?
and then repent. Confess, then
Yeah,
repent.
yeah, confess and then repent. I was just reading
Right.
that today. I couldn't
You've
believe
gotta-
it. So
Yeah, you've got to acknowledge it. You've got to acknowledge that you've done something wrong. Like, you can't. It's not free. It's not
it's so
free.
good though. Like, how cool is that? It's so cool to be able to say, hey, I really did this wrong, and I have 500 enemies, and you get to deal with all of it. Like, it tells you
Right.
exactly what you need to do, like
Right.
you just said, right? You need to confess and turn away from it. And the other thing is, every enemy you have, every woman who hates you, you get to pray for them. How cool is that? That's super cool, because then you get to pray for them, and then so that's intimacy, man. When you're praying for
Right.
your enemies, there's something really intimate
Right.
about
That's right. Well, that's the quality of the relationship you have with them. If the quality of the relationship you have is to cut off all communication, that there's no relationship there.
Yeah, and you just transformed them. You've literally transformed them by your prayers. Like, it's
right.
you have, because
right.
yeah, that's perception.
It reminds me too.
Go.
It reminds me too of just we've gotten this, this uber Protestant milk toast desacral. Like, Christianity is supposed to be radical. Christianity, like what you just described in the last year, like those are very. And I don't know. Actually, I don't even know how much of Mark's spiritual, and I don't need to. I enjoy Mark for Mark. But the point is that what you just described is pretty radical, like spiritual and existential outlook and way of dealing with the world. Like it's really beautiful, man.
Crazy. It's like the strangest tale ever told. Like, it's so strange. If you read the Bible, if you were the strangest person, which maybe I am, but you read the Bible, it's so weird and strange. Like, any adolescent would gobble it up in a second because it's so full of
only
nothing that you can ever figure out.
If only we presented it properly. I think you're so right, Elizabeth. It's all there. You could even get a child, caught with the fire of the Holy Spirit, but we've just drained it to this. Well, but it's not that. But it's not this.
It's words.
But it's not this. It's
Words.
not that. It's
Propositional.
We've told. Yes,
Yeah.
it's
That's the
propositions.
propositional tyranny that John talks about. That's the propositional tyranny. Well, where does that come from? That comes from the printing press, or more correctly, comes from Protestantism, from the Sola Scriptura.
I'm with you, Mark. Ever since I met my friends who don't read or write, and yet are the wisest people I've ever met, and I mean profoundly wise. And, and I've never met a man as kind as this man in my entire life, because he actually he embodies Dante's Purgatorio in the last canto, where he's talking about the gentlest soul, because he's all right hemisphere, so he's all imagination, intuition. He actually can enter, well, it sounds a bit odd, but he can enter into the other person in a very real way, because it's all imagination. It's got linear sequential. There's no linear sequential to this man at all. It's so you're in the presence of a holy man. There's no.
I love that how you just did that linear sequential for left. I haven't heard it that discreet.
Oh yeah. I'm a lover of McGilchrist. I read McGilchrist up the yin yang.
I think the whole JP Sphere TLC whatever. I think he's a huge piece. I've been beating his drum for a while.
He's the only thinker that will survive all of this. He's the only one who will be known in 100 years.
Wow.
Our model's way better. We were using the word linear.
And Mark,
that's a bold statement, though. That's a bold statement, Elizabeth.
Mark will be known. Mark might well, and I'm not joking about this either. Mark is really an incredible. He has this brilliant ability to. Well, first of all, he has so much knowledge. Like, I don't know where you get all your knowledge from. It's hardly fair for one person. You're like Dante. It drives me nuts. You have such a broad. No, but you have so much.
That's a lot to shoulder, Elizabeth.
Well, you are like Dante. I don't mean to. I'm not flattering you, because you know I'm not nice. So that's that.
That's true.
But seriously, you're able. You see these patterns. It astounds me, and I really mean it, Mark. Like
that's where the knowledge comes from. The pattern.
Ethan's got his finger on stuff.
If he wasn't sharp, I wouldn't be hanging around him.
I know, and I like you too, Matthew. You're sharp too. You're cool. There's something very cool about you. Go to Europe. Honestly, go to Europe now. Get a ticket. You can go for $700. Go and get the.
I got a busy end of this year, brother's wedding and stuff. But I'm thinking next year's. I'm only getting older, so I mean next year's.
Yeah, you should go.
And I can do it. I can financially do it. So what are we talking about?
It's your time. It's your time for Europe. Go to Sicily and you'll never regret it. Sicily's a
you see the name. I mean, I kind of gotta go. You see, Parlato Italian is so.
Just go to Sicily. Trust me. Go to Sicily. Go to Palermo. If you go to Palermo, you can see where the Norman kings from northern France were created. These amazing edifices with Byzantine mosaics, Arabic ceilings, Arabic decoration, and then the Christian imagery all together with Jewish stars here, there, and thither. And they actually had Jewish and Arab scholars in their courts, and several of the kings learned to speak Arabic. So Sicily was the only place I've ever heard of where they've actually understood that we're all talking about the same patterns, and they lived and they embodied it.
Sicily was conquered by the Moors, so there's a big integration there.
That's beautiful.
And the Jews were there. There was a lot of Jewish. There were a lot of.
It's a big crossroads because of the trade. It's a big crossroads.
Mediterranean. It was the center of the world.
You're almost describing this coalescing of understanding and respect or something, right? That's beautiful.
like we don't understand nowadays. Like, in case anybody wonders, even the people who went on the Crusades, Alessandro Barbero is clear. People at the knights and people at a certain level, whether they were Jewish, Arabic, or Christian, they were all exchanging knowledge during the Crusades. People don't understand that. This was not what people think it was, and people
No,
were.
I mean, there's the famous story about, I forget which one, right? One of the commanders loses his horse, and Saladin's watching the battle, and he goes, "Bring the guy a horse," right?
Yeah, because they admired each other.
Right. Well, they did, because a good warrior is a good warrior, man. Like, you know, and then that's why you need statues to quote bad people or people on the wrong side, because it's admirable that they did what they did in the way that they did it.
But this gets into the beautiful messiness of where my brain went, or my cognition is. Was that story true? Did you said Saladin?
Saladin, yeah,
you know, an Arab, yeah. So a Muslim general. Did he really have such high respect? Was there such a dignity and honor amongst our race and species at that point, that even he, when he saw a general who was who got, you know, a misfortune,
the Europeans, Alessandro Barbero researched for 10 years before he became a professor, and it's clear. There's not that our whole idea in North America about the Crusades is totally wrong. Peshar talks about it too. Like it was a very different thing than we imagined, and the cross-cultural integration of ideas and knowledge, because they weren't stupid. If you
a lot of that comes from Protestant propaganda too, pushing back on the high churches at that time, and so they paint it with a certain tone. He does it with the Dark Ages as well. I've even written a little bit on minuscule, on Carolingian minuscule, that the Dark Ages were this time of ignorance and illiteracy, yet they produced and offered Carolingian minuscule, you know, a revolution and fluency of literacy. You know, so
it wasn't.
That's a fascinating.
Yeah, but the Dark Ages are named backwards, and people don't realize that. They're the Dark Ages because there was a collapse after Rome. Right. And there was another collapse because of the plagues that happened in Europe, not the Justinian plague, right? But the other plagues, right? And so, but what happened? See, what people don't understand is that we lost a bunch of technology. That absolutely happened, but we also lost access to the classics. That's why they were reintroduced.
And also the powerful can still spin a story, spin a title, accentuate certain aspects to where the common pop cultural understanding of the Dark Ages is like this super Protestant I'm with you.
You're right. It's Protestant propaganda for sure. But the thing is, like, if you don't call it the Dark Ages, you can never properly understand what the Enlightenment is and why it's important. You will always misunderstand the Enlightenment, as many did. Like, I'm not saying that's a cure, but you will misunderstand, because the Enlightenment is literally the light carried by basically the Western canon, right? From ancient Rome and ancient Greece being brought back into the world. That's why the Dark Ages didn't have it, even though it was kind of there, but not really. Like, it wasn't mass distributed. The Protestant problem is that in order to do what they do, for whatever reason, they're flattening the world. And so you don't understand it. Yes, there's a respect among the kings that are battling because they're kings of the same class. This is actually what Plato's Book 7 is all about. What it's about, not the parable of the cave. I have a video on this. You can watch it. The parable of the cave is actually about different classes interact this way, not this way. The this way interaction is there, but it's very different, and there's no accolades. If you condescend to the whole point of Plato's cave, because if you have to read the end of Book 7, you can't just take the first 4 pages or whatever Plato's allegory is. You have to take the whole story. But even in the allegory, it says you can't break out of the cave. And if you tried, it would be painful. And you don't try. Someone drags you out. And then when you go back, you die. So maybe that's not the good, happy story you think. Maybe it's not the Matrix. Like, maybe not, because it's not. But the end, the whole point is you are taking somebody who is a true philosopher, not a sophist. Sophists are the worst people in the world, according to Socrates and Plato. And you're dragging them down you're dragging them down too. It's still a dragging to the bottom of the city, actually, right? And the thing is, they go down there. Now they've been taken away from their pursuit of the good. And Glaucon objects, and he goes, you can't do that. They're pursuing the good. Who gives you the right to do that? And Socrates admonishes him once again, because it's all in the Republic. It's everywhere in the Republic. We're doing this for the city, not for the person. Right. And so we have to take the person away from their personal pursuit of the good in order to make the city better. But here's the kicker. The whole point, right? This is the end of book 7. It's opposed to the allegory of the caves at the very beginning of book 7. Like the first thing. The last thing is to take the philosopher down away from the pursuit of the good. And he goes down and he says, this, and this are wrong and should be improved immediately. And they listen to some of it and do some of those things. And they jeer at him and basically laugh at him. And he gets no accolades for making it better. Because that's how it is.
Yes.
You are supposed to force the mixing of the layers of society. You can't get out of the layer of society you're in.
And it also
clear about this.
It also,
as a bell.
And it also highlights one of the factors I love of Plato is that he's realistic and raw and honestly raw, that sometimes the good doesn't win. Like the bad, the mundane, the trenches is the everyday. It's the good is the majestic, that which should be cherished when it happens upon you.
Right. Right. That's the thing you're grateful for.
Oh, nice, Matthew.
You.
Wow.
That's
Well, and it
Wow.
also reminds me too of that he has to be brought into this. It's this fractal. He has to be brought into the distributed cognition, right? He can't just be on this idiosyncratic.
That's right.
Yes, he has to be brought down into the participation of the city, of the group, and then we can get this fractal thing. I mean, that's the magic of Plato. Let's get real. I mean, if you take psychedelics and listen to it or stuff, I mean, it is a symbolic fractal structure that, the parable of the cave is right at it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And so it's
the book's
like
an onion. The book's an onion, right?
Yes,
and it unwraps like an onion. This
Yes.
is what Dr. Lantern Jack had to say about it. He's got some good Ancient Greece Declassified.
Can you say that name again?
Ancient Greece Declassified. You can go on YouTube and look up Dr. Lantern Jack, and it'll come up. He talked to Vervaeke twice. They're the best Vervaeke conversations that Vervaeke has.
All right, maybe I'm just not recognizing his name. That'd be interesting if I haven't seen it. Okay.
So wait, Mark. What was his point about the nobleman who went down to the bottom and so what? I missed what you were saying.
The point.
I don't know Plato.
Like in the cave, when you're dragged down, like you spend time out of the cave and you get enlightened or whatever, right? Which is true. Like he says that, right? All this is impossible. He says up front, it's impossible. It can't happen. Hint, it's impossible, right? But he says, if it were possible, here's what would happen. You would go back down and those people would kill you or try to. And so what he's saying later in book 7 is, when we, and it's again, they have to do this. It's an outside force. It's outside of the city in some sense. He, as creator of city, that might be an important word, drags you down to the bottom. Well, in the cave, it's he as creator of city or creator of owner of cave, drags you out and up. At the end, he drags you down, right? So you get dragged down, and then you get jeered at for making their lives better. That's actually what happens. He says the whole time, like you can't expect accolades because you're not going to get them. You can't expect to be lauded for making their lives better because it's not going to happen. And they basically are pissed off. They're like, how dare you tell us to change what we do?
Well, and it also makes me think again, and this is how we got kind of here, is it just emphasizes it smacks you with the textured, layered ontology, not flatland, right? It shows you it's explanatory to how Saladin could see the general across and say, hey, that's another king. If I'm going to win this honorably, that guy needs a horse. Go get him a horse. And so that's where it really just takes my brain to like, man, are we that mysterious? Are we that magical of an entity of this organism that myth could be true? It's like, where does myth
but the whole idea of fractality is what's being embodied there, right? That's exactly right. I wrote that on my Twitter account. There's an extraordinarily wealthy industrialist who comes to my tiny little island, and I, being a stupid idiot, comment to some of the local people about, Oh, I said, oh, well, his boat, like, why does he have that? Everybody else drives these little old wooden boats that are 50 years old with 9 horsepowers because, like, that's all they need. So why would you drive more? And anyway, the industrialist has a classy boat, you know, like everybody drives on the ponds up here in Canada because everybody's a stupid idiot. But so I made a really dumb comment. I said, well, why does he need such a big boat? And they were shocked that I hadn't understood fractality, that obviously an industrialist does not have the same boat or the same horse
Right.
as
Well, and he needs
the local
that.
fisherman. No,
Right.
It really showed me how dumb I am, how I have no
Right.
idea. I'm living in a flat world.
That's right.
These
That's
are
right.
fishermen who corrected me.
That's right. They're not jealous.
Right.
They're not jealous, and they don't want that
because it raises
boat.
them up. It raises
They
them
don't
up.
want that. Well, it gives them something to look forward to, and also they see what they're supporting.
Well, then no, it shows them that reality's fractal. It shows
Right.
them
And
fractal.
imagine. Look, and I'm a craftsman, and I'm not looking. But imagine the world in the life of a fisherman who sees a flat land. Imagine how despairing that would. The texture, the ideal, the elite. You know, the industrialist shows up with his fancy boat. That colors my life. That colors
Right.
my day to day.
Right.
Yeah,
It expands your
guess
world.
Guess what? The wealthy industrialist, and you would know the name. Everybody in the world would know the name if I told you. Guess who his best friend is? The fisherman who can't read or write.
Yeah. Of course. Right. He's everybody's best
And
friend.
I mean a sincere, deep, respectful friendship because they
Right.
both understand the
Right.
patterns.
But also he needs that boat, and the fishermen don't need that boat because
Yeah,
it's
he
not
does
good
need
for
the boat.
fishing.
Yeah, he
He
does
needs the
actually.
boat. Like he actually needs the boat. Like if no one needs that. No,
He's not
he
going
does.
fishing. He's not going fishing, right? He's having people come to his place.
Well,
Yeah,
and
he has a different life.
to relax.
Right.
Like people need rest when they're leading. When you're running a company or whatever, you need rest, man. I run a project, I get wiped out. Like running projects sucks for me. It's just too many people. I hate people. People are the worst. You are the worst. People are the worst. Oh, and then I just get wiped out. I mentally get wiped out because I'm tracking too much stuff. And like Thunder Bay was very difficult for me. I mean, I did fine, but like, man, that was hard. Just so many people. And they're all peopling. The problem is the people that keep peopling. If the people would stop peopling, everything would be fine.
Yeah, I
I
know.
mean,
Why
really.
are peopling? Like that's the other.
What happened?
People are doing too much peopling. You're right. Write a book about that, Mark. Go. People are doing too much
Stop
peopling.
peopling by Mark Lefevre.
Seriously, Mark, you've got to
Sounds good,
put that in
Elizabeth.
your book.
People would be fantastic if it wasn't for all that peopling.
They
Exactly.
would be.
See, Matthew understands.
We need to be more like that's the other thing. The people on my island that we don't know which are the animals and which are the people. And I'm not being derogatory in any sense or silly. It's really hard to tell which are which, and I'm serious in a sense because they're still so linked to the natural world. They're totally linked to the natural world still.
Right. Well, and that's what you should be. I mean, it was interesting, right? Because Peterson talks about this. He says, introverts need to go outside to recharge, right? And I'm just right. I'm looking out my window at my pond on my 12 acres, going, "Yes, Peterson, that is correct." It's like yes.
Yeah,
that is true.
That's one of Dr. McGilchrist's main themes is the importance of nature. And yeah, we all need to be in nature because it teaches you so many lessons inevitably. John Vervaeke maybe might, I don't know how much time he spends in nature, for example. Like nature's
not enough. Not enough.
I have to agree. But
excellent.
yeah.
I agree. Peopling are the worst. Excellent. Good. See, I knew it wasn't just us, Elizabeth. Other people recognize the peopling as the problem.
It really is. I told my friend, I quoted you, Mark. I met the young fellow who's a writer. I told him about you, and what was it that you said once? I don't know what to tell you. People are horrible. He said, "Who said that?" I said, "Mark Lefevre. You should go on his live stream. Maybe I'll try to convince him next time I go back." His name's Tommaso, and he's really interesting. He's a really interesting fellow. You'd like him. You'd really like him. He's super interesting, and he's real. He's real. He goes up Yeah, he can't stand. Oh, he can't stand people even on my island. He has to go way up on the hill. And guess what? They still have these ancient places that they build out of stones. Get this. These are
Really?
arched buildings for the animals. And they built the arches with irregular shaped stones, and nobody knows how to do it anymore. Do you know how
Right.
impossible
They
it
don't
is
know.
to build
They have
an
no idea.
arch? It's
Dark Ages.
impossible to do that, to build an arch with irregular shaped stones. Nobody could do that, but they've
It's
done.
the Dark Ages.
It's the Dark
the dark-
Ages.
We had the Dark Ages. We lost a bunch of technology.
You should see how beautiful these animal houses are. You wouldn't believe when I saw one. He took me into one of these places, the Capagliera, where the animals used to live, and it is so astoundingly beautiful. Like the Florence Cathedral has nothing on it. I'm actually serious.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, look. When my YouTube channel takes off and I have my billions of dollars, the next time you go to Italy, I'll go with you.
Okay.
This is right where I kind of wanted to go then. And I don't know if Mark, you do have a breadth of knowledge, but you also don't know everything. So I don't know if you have any comment on this, but I heard someone going into this little vector on, this new revival of Christianity for some sorts, especially Orthodox, and the heritage of these glorious artful masterpiece, generations of love poured into these churches, and that to recreate that. It's almost that he didn't even understand the framing of like what I just kind of added. I gave him a little bit of credit there with like understanding the generations of self-sacrifice, because
Right.
it was like he was trying to frame it as we couldn't get that done in a 3-year project today with
That's right. That's right.
Okay, you get where I'm getting. All right.
Yeah.
I don't want to mucky it up anymore. Just do you have any thoughts on that? Like trying to recreate one of those beautiful, profound churches again today.
Right.
The numbers,
Well,
it was astronomically absurd.
Yeah, you can't. Right, you can't do it because we're materializing it, and in material form it can't happen.
Yeah.
Like, you
That's
can't-
exactly where my brain went, Mark. Exactly where you're taking it. Go.
Right,
go.
and
That's
the thing is,
exactly right.
a lot of those people who live, especially in Europe, I mean Europeans in general, like I've got my problems with Europeans for sure, but also like they are so ingrained in history. Like it's so part of their axiomatic world assumptions that they don't talk like that because like nobody needs to say those words. Duh. Everything takes time. Everything was generations. Like this is why we're confused in the United States about love, right? Because we don't have care. I think care is a better word. We don't have care built into everything. It's not an axiomatic assumption about all the things of the universe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's so profound there, Mark. That's so
yeah,
profound.
write it down.
And
Chapter 10.
and again, I think that's exactly where my brain went, is that this guy was sitting there trying to do the numbers. He was trying to do the logistics.
Yeah.
He was trying to figure out the contractors and here's the puns, pardon the material list. And I'm just like, buddy, you're not. And here's even the weirder part. I think the conversation was somewhat adjacent to this sphere of the this corner, this area, and so it kind of just struck me. I was like, man, you're totally got a misconstrual here, brother. And it's exactly what you said. And then here's where my brain went to, is this hyper prior's profound implicit thing is there something about the new world, the innovative American that disinhibits, it renders us incapable of understanding that care times temporality is
well, we opened up the world.
But I said, go.
And when you open up the world, it's harder to look back and appreciate the past, right? Because now it's the Faustian thing, right?
Right. Or the way we do is by stealing the past from Europe.
And we don't do it properly because we've lost the context. French postmodernists are a perfect example.
And that's why the postmodernist trick works. So I talk about this in one of my videos.
And disconnected from Europe. We're so dumb. All you need to do is go to France now and you'd get it. Even
maybe. Well, I don't think you would. I think we're untrained. I think we've lost the poetic way of informing the world.
No, if you spent a couple of months there, you drank a lot of wine in the morning with the farmers,
maybe if you were forced to spend a couple months there, maybe.
Poetic
But you know
participation.
what I always said, Matthew, to your point, you know what I always thought? The first time I went over, I was 17. It's the bloody Atlantic Ocean. If nobody understands how vast the Atlantic Ocean is, they don't understand culture. They don't understand North America.
I just looked at it on Google Maps like a night ago. I just did it on Google. I was like, damn, this thing is big. And then I just want to drop one little nugget. This is kind of irrelevant. Mark, you mentioned the Canada. That was me on a stream with you a month ago. We talked about the Canada question of, Vervaeke Peugeot.
Oh, that's right. That was you. Okay.
That was me.
Yeah.
It's
I want to
obvious.
catch up. I want to catch up on comments real quick.
I gotta get
John.
your shoulder.
John, hello. Apologies for making those allegations. Apology accepted, John. I sleep deprived. Okay. And I noticed a ton of similarities or coincidences, sure. I'm watching a reaction video. I was going to post it tonight, but it needs more work. Okay. I'm sorry. Well, apology accepted, John. I understand that you're struggling, brother. So, and I do thank you for the super chat. That's fantastic.
It takes some, and I have no idea but it takes a man to apologize. So yeah,
it really does. No, John's just struggling, but he's a good dude, so it's fine. It's fine. Ray Moran. Hey, Ray. Can we go back to finding a story that aligns the divine feminine in a way that sublimates the current dynamic? Okay.
Wow.
Ray,
I like Ray. You be a fan of Ray.
I probably, Ray, don't take this the wrong way. This is how I am, and Matthew will vouch for me. How about no with the stories? Like, I'm sorry, but like, how about some freaking participation in the world? Like, the participation solves all of this. Then you don't need your stupid books. Burn all the damn books. I'm not kidding. Burn them all. I don't care. Just participate in the world. This is what Elizabeth was talking about. Just go to an island and fish, and the problem will go away. It'll go away.
Here's the thing.
It'll just vanish.
Let me steal man Ray, because I think it's y'all's implicit here. Because what you're saying is enact the story. The story will be written, will be enculturated. You're saying we are in this flat famine flood. Like, it's time to go do the legend will be written later.
Well, where you think a story is going to fix a problem, but if this is the issue. Like, I have a video. PVK actually watched this one, although I'm not sure how well he got it. Called Story Narrative Archetype. Watch that video, Ray. Watch that video. Because the problem with story is an implementation. It's a single instance. A single instance is not going to save the world ever of anything. It's not going to work. It's many stories point to narrative patterns.
Yeah.
And those narrative patterns make contrast the archetype. And the archetype is what we're striving for. And I have to sit down and do some slides. Maybe I can get Sarah to help me with slides. I have to do slides on this, but like that outline that I just made, that work was the thing we were working on with there's a realm of transformative coupling and all this other stuff that I have to do slides on. That was the work that led us to the knowledge engine model. That is a vast improvement on John's 4 Ps. Vast.
Like, what do you mean about contrast the archetypes? You have to go back and explain that, please. What I was okay until you got to story narrative patterns, and then
can I try my intuition of what you meant?
Yeah, go ahead.
The various narratives that are repeating patterns will kind of triangulate through AKA contrast into a symbolic structure that we identify as an archetype. Is that somewhere what you were kind of going for, or can you do it a little better than that?
Yeah, actually, I want to try to put it with Peugeot's work, and forgive me if
go,
I'm sloppy,
go, because this is super important.
I'm enjoying this. This is good stuff, guys.
Like super important. Like go, Mark. I'm on the edge of my chair.
A little leeway, because this is the first time I'm trying this.
Oh my gosh!
Peugeot talks about the veil. Okay. So what you want to do is not lift the damn veil. Like that's
amen.
This is the problem of the quote age of gnosis that I tweet about all the time, is that we're trying to lift the veil all the time, and that's actually a mistake. Right? Because you can't take what's underneath the veil. Like, you can't, Matthew, you can't take the depravity of the human condition.
Amen.
Right? I can't either. Right? Like, you can't.
Right.
And so you shouldn't do that.
Right.
So what happens is the story puts a veil on the narrative so that you can see the narrative in a way. the narrative patterns. Those are patterns. The narrative patterns, once you understand more and more of them, and there'll be one or more narrative patterns in every story, most likely, right? Different parts, whatever,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you've got all these lights down here shining up on this thing up here that's just a bunch of patterns, right?
Yeah.
And so, but they're veiled, which is fine. They're supposed to be veiled, right? That's why I don't like Campbell's work, because he's trying to rip a veil off and he's doing a poor
Yay!
job of it. He sucks.
Thank
He
you,
doesn't even
thank you,
understand
thank
his
you,
own
thank
work.
you, thank you.
Terrible.
I can't bear
Terrible human
Campbell.
being.
If anybody mentions his name again, I'm gonna die. Go.
Okay, so then there's more contrast, because two points of contrast is insufficient. Like you just get wiped out, right? So there's more contrast. So that contrast shows the archetypes in a veiled fashion.
Yes.
Right?
What do you
There's
mean by
more
archetype?
veiled. Huh?
That lands well for me. Go ahead.
Okay.
No,
So-
what do you mean by archetype? Sorry, no, you're not going to just throw that word at me without telling me what you mean.
Well, the archetypes are the ideals of, instead of the patterns, the objects.
What do you
So
mean by ideals?
there's an archetypal hero. There's an
There's no such
archetypal
thing as a hero,
woman.
actually, Mark.
No, there is. There's an archetypal hero, but there isn't one archetypal hero. There's an archetypal woman, but there isn't one archetypal. Right? So you can say, like, the archetypal woman is, a mother and a wife, right? Who embodies, all these things, right? But there's not one female archetype. And so that, right, and that's where we struggle, because we want a single answer. So we're like, well, a hero is Iron Man, and it's like, well, look, there's different ways. There's also the knight in shining armor who helps with your luggage. That's also a hero, right? But those are both the same archetype, right? Even though they're doing different things, right? Because they're following different narrative patterns, but they're following them to the same archetype, which is the hero archetype.
Can I try?
It's the same with the feminine and the masculine.
I don't usually think you're wrong, but you're wrong about that part, I think.
I think it's a symbolic mode of being. That's what I would say is the archetype. Is you align yourself through, like I said, you enact these stories which reveal, I'll even give you your veil. I like the veil because it also reminds us that this imaginal space, that we don't ever get the one-to-one reality.
Nice.
Reality is always too complex, right?
Yeah.
But so then these narrative patterns, now they will show you and illuminate these modes of beings that you can kind of just aim at, right? And the aiming, you'll never get to the ideal. I'll never get to, I'm a Christian, I'll put my cards on the table. That would be the archetype of archetypes. Let's get meta. And so it's like that's this, I'm trying to embody Christ, right? That's the move. So it's this mode of being that's my attempt at archetype for you, Elizabeth.
Okay,
let me try this, Elizabeth. So I don't like the term Christianity because I don't think it exists. I'll do Cathodoxy. So if you wanted to distill Cathodoxy down to 3 archetypes, it would be God the Father, right? Mary the Mother of God, because the Catholics and Orthodox agree on all that, right? And Jesus in the center of the cross. Like, bang, there's 3 archetypes. There's the only 3 that matter, in fact, for Cathodoxy. Right, there you go. And how do you do that? Well, through different narratives, different patterns, right? Different patterns instantiate, and you can never reach the archetype because Matthew admitted it. Matthew, see, you admitted it. You're not going to be Jesus. You're going to try though, and that's all that matters.
I don't like the word archetypes. Can't you use a different word? I don't like it because it gets confused with.
Well, hold on. How about this? Can you go into, how about this? Obviously we can do whatever. Can we explore what's your discomfort there? Can you?
Because it reminds me of Jung, and I just think it's not very well defined. What about, well, McGilchrist talks about exemplars, and I rather like that term.
Exemplar. Well, yeah, I get it, but McGilchrist is flattening the world too, and that's my problem.
He is in some areas, but in this area, he's not. Exemplars are definitely how it works. But
I like
exemplars. But symbolic exemplars actually embody symbolic modes of being. They do, and he's right about exemplars. That's why everybody reads Don Quixote. Everybody reads Don Quixote.
It is semantics, Mark. We're definitely doing semantics, but just to, let me humor her, because I want to try and
humor me.
Well, not in some kind of
Oh,
patronizing.
you stepped in it now, Matthew.
In a
Humor me.
well,
I'm coming from Italy where I'm dealing with really strong men.
okay,
And
I
I
am
put them
Italian.
in their
I am
place.
Italian.
Let me tell
Okay.
you.
May
I
I
put
take a step
those
back?
men in their
I
place.
meant-
They've never seen anything like me, Matthew.
I didn't mean humor in a patronizing way. I meant
Mea
let's
culpa. Mea
entertain.
culpa, Matthew. Quick.
Let's
Just say mea
entertain
culpa.
the
Let's fix
let's
crime.
entertain the generative conversation. Before I lose the train of thought, is I want to kind of steel man your point. Is there is a extreme end of the spectrum that Jung has kind of captured himself in, with only the down and the within, where, and I think this is what JP does, and this is why I think we all kind of love JP, and I think it kind of jives with the McGilchrist exemplars. So this is why I was willing to concede that semantic wonkiness is that JP kind of he takes the archetypes, the exemplars, and says, no, these aren't just these coalescence of symbolic narrative patterns that then you get this distillation into this. It's also this participatory embodied thing. It's out and up as well. It's down and in and out and up. And so there is, I would give you that.
It's intimacy. It's intimacy. Exemplars are about an intimate relationship. That's why they work.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because you can have an intimate relationship. That's what you do. That I'm an exemplar, for example. I'm an exemplar of the feminine. I really am. Sorry, but I am.
Yeah.
And so you either get it or you don't get it. And
at some point it's semantics. That's the issue. And it's fine. It follows exactly the same pattern where again, you're down here, there's a pattern, right? It's a way of enacting, and the thing you're enacting is the thing at the top. You can call it exemplar if you want. It really doesn't matter. You call it archetype. It doesn't make any difference, right? And then that's actually important. But the reason why we can't do that is the loss of the poetic way of informing the world.
Yeah.
And that's where the intimacy crisis comes in, is when you lose the way of poetically informing the world, you can't have intimacy, and so you can't participate in meaning, because the meaning's a participatory thing. I did want to catch up on comments real quick. So let's see. A line for the current dynamic is, it's hard to learn to fish making minimum wage. No, it's not. Don't make minimum wage. Just go fish. Like, just give up everything and go fish. These people
are really wealthy because the fish don't cost anything, and they cook them, and a meal costs $70. So yeah, it's
right.
Just have to get some fish.
Right. You're trapping yourself in. Ray, you're trapping yourself in a frame that you don't need to be trapped. You don't need to play that game. Right. You can literally just like abandon everything and go fish. I think it would work.
Just need a hook.
People do it all the time. That's the funny part. Yeah. People do this all the time. All the time. Right. Oh, and he says, thanks for this deal, man. Yeah. Oh, here's Sally. All right, Sally. Regarding archetypes, even one person isn't one archetype. Well, or isn't trying to be, maybe. If they're both worth a damn, a woman hopefully is 3 over her life. Well, there's different phases and cycles.
100.
I don't want to get into that whole thing.
But Matthew, your point is well taken. Keep going. Sorry. I mean,
let me just finish this.
Point.
Ray, thinky talky. Yeah, well, I try to get people out of that, Ray. Now Matthew dies. Yeah.
Hey, we're all
really stepped in it.
We're all Jordan Peterson fans here, and I was not careful with my words.
You were not careful with your words about the poetry. Ray, check out my video on navigating patterns, the knowledge engine model, and then that'll all make perfect sense to you. And if it doesn't, write a comment and tell me what doesn't make sense, or jump on my Discord server, and I'll Mark of Wisdom Discord server, and I'll work it out. Because if that's not clear. If that's not clear, and it might not be, like, we worked for years on that. Like, if that's not clear, I need to be able to know that so I can make it clear, because that's super important.
Ray's an impressive. He's an impressive mind. I'm glad you guys are connecting here.
The markofwisdom.org website has the knowledge engine model right on the top of it, so you can see the slide. But the video will help because it goes through some. And if you want to know more about it, my first talk with PVK. The first half of it is just boring stuff about me, but the second hour is the knowledge, is the first revision. We changed some of the words. It's all none of the work changed, just the words. And then I think there's one other talk I've done on that, but I can't remember off the top of my head where it is. One of these days I'll get all the indexes and stuff up on the markofwisdom.org website. But yeah, we have all this work. It's all ready and available. And if we hadn't been demonized by snakes, probably more people would engage and help us.
Mark, your basic thesis though is that in fact the what lies behind the veil is so, you could say, holy, that we would vaporize if we could see it, right? We wouldn't be able to.
That's a very Catholic perspective. All I'm saying, in a very secular way, is that there are things that you can't handle. We would call them forbidden knowledge. Forbidden knowledge is actually a big theme in the Republic, by the way. And that's the problem. That's what you need the veil to protect you from the forbidden knowledge.
I love that, Mark. You're becoming like this ambiguous spiritual figure. Like, I have no idea your religion, and I also kind of really want to know, but also like kind of just want you to keep it a secret from me or something.
It's the basic.
But hey, it is also a mark of intellectual robustness and rigor, because you're not showing any, you have not, and we've interacted a good bit. You have not revealed your slant, if you will.
He doesn't have a slant. He doesn't really have
one.
A slant. He's just being a human
refreshing.
being. That's the point.
Right, that's the trick.
There's no freaking slants, man.
Hey, I wanted to at risk of taking us a little bit of a step back, and I understand you had a quibble with the aim and telos, but maybe we can kind of reword it and rework it to try and get a good question out of it. He's to Ray's point on trying to kind of reactivate this feminine, right? We have the women in this, like maybe we could. I don't know if there's a question there. If you want to rip, yeah, go ahead.
Let me rip on it, but first let me just.
Of course.
Ray, would love to have you check out the work and comment on it if you can. If you can, I understand, but like we love feedback. Also, you're not an opponent processor. We don't do that here. This is what's destroying the world, dude. You want lots of intimacy? It's opponent processing. We do cooperative processing because we're good people. We like to cooperate with one another. But you're always welcome in either case, as long as you don't use the term opponent processing, because I'll just yell at you until you stop. Also, Bruce makes a very good point. Mark, a human. It's still up in the air, Bruce. You've met me, it's very, who knows? I might not be. Mostly, have you considered that I'm a Muppet? And that's maybe that's the resolution there. All right, Matthew, to address your question, now that we're over all that silliness, to address your question, look, I think again, like if Jonathan Pageau is correct, and I'm just like, I'll tip my hand. He's absolutely correct. The world is attention.
I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Go ahead.
The world is attention, right? Relevance realization is the important question. Like Vervaeke says it, right? Vervaeke's correct. If relevance realization is about attention, then he's correct. I think it is, right? And so what that means is that what we point at, what we're aiming at matters, right? Where we aim matters. Okay. So when as a society we aim at individualism, we're screwed because it forces opponent processing. Because if you're an individual, you're in opposition to everybody around you. You have to be. There's no other way to be. But
yourself. You're against yourself. You're against yourself.
By definition, this is why the Neoplatonists get caught. Also, Matthew, I just had this ridiculous insight the other day. Actually, I think it was 2 days ago. The problem with Neoplatonism is they've got the one and the many. They don't have the unity. Right. So, you've denied all Platonic thought automatically because Plato buys into Pythagoras and the triangles, right? So the question is, right, to go back to your question, how do we fix this? Okay, because so first, why do we need to fix this? So I'm going to do some trickery here. It's going to be fun, right? The reason why we need to fix this is because the world needs you to be better. Okay, that's why we need to fix this, right? Right. And then how do we fix it? This is how we fix it. I'm not joking. This is how we fix it. You have to understand this picture that Sally Joe did for us. It was a collaborative effort. It took way too long.
I love that.
Right.
It's brilliant.
The pointing
It's brilliant.
matters. The pointing matters. The man built the thing to make the woman the same height as him. That's where the equality comes from. The man lifts up the woman through his creation.
Wow,
The woman
that
is
is
pointing at a
so
star that
beautiful,
he can't
Sally.
see. She doesn't see. She doesn't see what he's pointing at. He doesn't see what she's pointing at, but they're joined. Their hands are
Yep.
joined.
Yep.
There's so much
There it
more
is.
symbolism in here. I'm not going to go into all of it, but this is something that you can actually contemplate. I'm not
I
going to
love
claim you
that.
can contemplate it like
It's
a
brilliant.
Renoir
It's
or
beyond
anything
brilliant.
crazy, but also there's a lot going on in that picture. And once we pay attention to what we're pointing to, right? And we pay attention to costs, which was the point of this
Once-
whole live stream, right? Then we can begin to shift the conversation, right? In general, and that will cause more people to pay attention to different things, right? And I think if you look at what Peterson has done, I have a couple videos on Peterson and what he's done, and you really need to understand that because nobody know, I'm convinced, actually, I'm way ahead on this. Nobody really understands what he's done, right? But once you understand the secular language and how he's introduced it, and that he's not some crazy evangelical reincarnation of Billy Graham or whatever PVK thinks. Like, once you understand the secular language is important because that's all they have.
Yep,
And once
yep,
you understand that their assumptions, like everyone goes like,
yep.
I don't understand why Vervaeke hasn't flipped over to Christianity, or Peterson for that matter. And it's like, I understand it perfectly well. If you don't understand it, I'm sorry, but you're missing obvious, clear stuff. It's very clear why. And so that you need to do an exploration of why that's true. And I think I don't have a graphic for this, but I hope to someday. I think part of the problem is that the Catholics and even some of the Protestant crazy people, not the Reformed, they're all awesome. Bruce can tell you. They do not understand that Peterson and Vervaeke are way down at the bottom of a staircase. Maybe Peterson's a few stairs up, and they see him as one step away. And so they keep trying to add the one step, and they're always wrong about what the one step is. And he's never gone up a step at all, right? You see him getting closer, but he's not getting any closer. He's actually not, because the concepts required to understand the points are not there, but he's using the words. The best example of this is emanation. He'll say the word emanation. He'll spend 20 minutes talking about emergence. He does it pretty reliably. He did have a definition of emanation that was absolutely terrible once, but
I would love to riff on that, on what I think is emanation. And then what I would also say is that just to all that landed, and I agree with most. Here's where I would try and maybe see if there's some here's my intuition is there a are they present? I'll just be blunt. Are they presenting a public persona with it? In their whatever is their more deeper inner thoughts? Are they recognizing that, hey, we lack the concept, we lack the rigorous concepts that we are so used to. We lack I'll be technical. We lack the ontology to make the jump. That I recognize that the cathodoxy is actually a staircase above me, though they're confused.
They don't recognize that, Matthew. They don't see the vertical cause. They talk about vertical cause. They don't see it.
Okay.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think either.
I think it's landing.
They don't see. But let me segue real quick to comments, and then I'll get right back to what you're saying, because I do need some processing time. And yes, I can do both.
For sure.
Ixnat. Mark could be one of the lizard people. I could. True story, bro. See my conspiracy videos. You might learn some. Ray, cooperative processing. I like it. Good. We like that you like it. That's good. Cooperative process with us. No more of this opponent stuff. We're not your opponent, dude. We're here to help. It's like I'm here to help. I'm not going to opponent you.
It's actually past cooperative processing. There's no way it has to be intimate processing. There's no way it can just be cooperative. It has to be intimate.
Cooperation requires some type of intimacy for sure. Sally Joe, he is sensitive to cold. I became sensitive to cold, Sally, to be fair. Lizard
should live in Canada. God help us. That's why we're all so upset up here. It's because it's so freaking cold.
I don't even want to go to Canada because it's cold.
Canada's awful. I tell everybody, don't come to Canada, whatever you do.
All right, let's get back to Matthew's question. So, Matthew, I think let me just I don't want to speak poorly of my good friend John, because I still love John, right? Or Peterson, because who am I to criticize the great man? Because for real, right? Let's go with Sam Harris, because I don't like Sam Harris one little bit anyway. Guys like Sam Harris do not understand a fundamental thing, right? Which is there's a creation that they were born into.
Right.
And when you do not understand that conceptually, I'm not talking about language, screw language. Language is an illusion, right? It's
Right.
largely an illusion. Anybody can use a word that they don't understand. It's not that hard, right? I can just blurt out a word that I have no definition for, although I couldn't do it off the top of my head because I don't know that word. Right? But like anybody can blurt out Rumpelstiltskin, and then you can think they mean Rumpelstiltskin, and actually they've never heard the story.
Right.
Like that happens all the time with people. And so the way you understand whether or not they understand a concept is by listening closely to what they say and what they pay attention to and how they focus. Again, Vervaeke will never talk about emanation for as long as he'll talk about emergence.
Well, I think
Right.
it's an easier one too. Like I want to, because that is what I was gonna. Glad you jogged my memory. That is where I was gonna see if you'd let me riff for just a hair to see if I can kind of chew on and see what you think on my. I mean, who the hell am I? But I've thought
Sure.
about emanation. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So where I'm trying to understand it as it's the all the bottom up comes from this the creatio ex nihilo, this pinhead or smaller than a pinhead that explodes at the big bang into all that is, and then these random particles and processes and chemicals and molecules and everything rises up. Okay, the emanation is this inverted, or the obverse, I like the word, the obverse take on that. It's the way I understood it is the fractal of will. If we're gonna let's put the Christian hat on, right, or the Cathodox hat of God, right? It's the will, the unmoved mover to will that first instance, that creatio ex nihilo, that entity that becomes creation, and so that is cognized as this emanating force that started everything, right? And that and that comes down, and then where that fits in and how we kind of can understand and participate in that is
Right.
the Christian attunement of our wills with providence, right? Is that, am I doing the right thing? Is my
Yeah.
is my will attuned with God's will? And God bless if you ever get that moment. That's edge of my cognition stuff. That's how I go ahead.
No, that's fine, Matthew. So the word I was looking for was starting, right? Because there is but a starting.
I gave you that one, I thought. I think.
No, you did. No, I bet I was, I was like, is he going to say it or not? Is he going to say it or not? Is he going to say it? Right? Because, and here's the key. Here's why they don't understand creation or have the conception of creation. Because if it comes first, if it's the starting point, if it comes first, it has primacy. Right? And that means hierarchy automatically. Automatically. There's some force, idea, concept, whatever. Don't even care. Formula,
thing.
Irrelevant, right? That would always be God. Always. Whatever else you call it, right? That came first, right? And everything came after and is below. And then the thing that came first is constantly, we'll say, messaging down towards you and everything else. That's the emanation.
I like that. That lands.
Right. And then because that's happening, after that happens, it has to be after. Subordinate to that emanation is emergence.
Yes. Okay.
And
okay.
that solves the problem. The
And
difference
John
is
wants it simultaneous.
he wants a simultaneous. He wants reciprocal.
But see, I
right?
think, but here's the thing: is I think if you take it all the way to the rigorous philosophy, and now I'm going to bring in Platonism, whatever I know it's your channel. If I'm going to bring in the Platonism, you're getting into the deep theological philosophy of the first instantiation of the one and the one turning on
But
itself and
right, but
relationality
don't have
relating
to.
to it and relating
Right,
to
but you
how it
don't
relates.
have to. Right, but you don't have to, because if you use a bad
What I'm saying
framework,
is because there's kind of, I guess this seems like a cop out, but there's kind of a both and there, because there is like you said, that sequent, and I hate this, but I have to surrender that sequentialism that you described.
that's right.
But what the argument that the Platonists would say is at that level of abstraction with the one, time and sequence is blurred to what our understanding
Right.
is.
Right,
Right.
that's what they would say, but they're wrong. And the way that
Okay.
you know they're wrong is because they only have two things, which makes them. This is the irony of John Vervaeke. So I'm not a dualist.
No,
I'm a Neoplatonist. That's a dual. It's a dualism. It's explicitly a dualism.
Brother, there's plenty of Trinitarian Christian Neoplatonists, brother. Come on now. Now you could say that form.
Matthew. That's not true.
Form
That's
connects to matter.
No. Watch the Dr. Lantern Jack stuff.
You're talking to a Christian Neoplatonist, brother.
Look. There's no such thing as Neoplatonism. It doesn't even exist
you're
as a
talking to
concept.
Platonist.
It never happened. Plato doesn't believe in two things. The Neoplatonism is always one and many. That's two things. That's a dualism.
I'm a Trinitarian, and I
Then
understand.
you can't be a Neoplatonist, because Neoplatonists are dualists. They are all dualists. They have to be. That's why I said if you just don't use the binary framework. I have a video on binary thinking.
Are you missing the tripartite? I'm misunderstanding.
No, I'm telling you can't have both. You can either have a dualism or the Trinity. You can't exist in both. You have to pick one.
I understand that.
Well, then if you're not a dualist, you can't be a Neoplatonist.
My understanding is that the Platonists wrestle with the duality of the one and the many through a tripartite, through love.
No, they don't wrestle with anything, because none of that ever happened. No, none of that ever happened. None of it. There's no paperwork anywhere. There's not a book. There's not a line of thought. It doesn't exist. It actually, I looked into this. It actually doesn't exist. John will go Plotinus. Plotinus denies parts of the form.
Porphyry, Iamblichus. Yeah,
they deny Plato. They deny the forms. They don't even have a third thing.
I'm not into hashing out whether you believe in Platonism or Neoplatonism or trying to refute my understanding of Christian Platonism. That's not a conversation that I'm
but again, all I'm saying is there are good frameworks and bad frameworks, and Neoplatonism is not a framework, and it's not good. It can't lead you to anything, and it doesn't lead to Christianity. What Lantern Jack told me was, he said the following. This is years ago.
I'm going to go watch this video tomorrow. I'm watching this video tomorrow morning.
Watch both the videos with him. I set up the first one, by the way.
Okay.
What he told me was, who cares? They got wiped out by Christianity. There was never a sect of Neoplatonism. There were a bunch of groups, none of whom agreed on anything, basically, except maybe Plato. But then in the videos, every time John says Neoplatonism, Jack goes, and he's a PhD in ancient philology. He doesn't like being called a philosopher. That's how based he is. He's about the most based person who knows anything about philosophy I've ever met. Right? He doesn't like the term. He hates modern philosophers. He's actually visited a good number of the colleges and universities and talked to the heads of the philosophy departments, and he's a little upset about the answers he got. Right? But he actually calls John out every time and says, no, that's Plato, dude. Every time. Because there is nothing you can identify that is Neoplatonic.
I'm fine calling myself a Platonist. I'm fine calling myself a Christian Platonist.
You can be a Platonist, and if you actually understand Plato, he's not a dualist. And as long as you don't do the one and many, you can do one and many in unity. That fixes it. Problem solved.
I'm with you on that. I say one and many in love as a Christian, but I'm with you on that. yeah, I don't want to get into like I said.
No,
to-
no,
to
let's
the-
not. Let's not get into the weeds. Bruce, you must have something to say, my friend.
Whether there's
You're here.
Neoplatonism or Middle.
I mean, I'm trying my best not to derail. All this is going to get wild. I mean,
Derail away. Go
the
ahead.
first question I would have is why identify with Neoplatonism as a Trinitarian Christian? I am a Trinitarian Christian.
Yeah.
So the identification to me is kind of interesting. I'm not really sure what the need for such a thing would be, considering the Trinitarian position fulfills all needs.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah,
a strange one to me.
I
And
can
then
answer that.
B would be what creates unity among diversity?
Right.
Love.
Well, how do you define that?
Right. That's the problem.
Love-
That's the
love-
Vervaeke problem. Vervaeke points out
yeah.
that problem, Matthew. Come on.
Love is the pure relationality that is relating to how it relates. But what I would say is here's
It's a
here's where
tautology.
to
It's
Christian,
a tension. Love is the tension.
It's a tautology and a self-reference. So
love is care. I like that. I like the Heideggerian care. But here to answer your question, Bruce, here's how it's just my journey that got me here. I was into more Zen Buddhist stuff that brought me into a line with and a lot of this was reading actually political philosophy that spilled over into just a more broader love of philosophy in general and the application. And then a big disclaimer, big John Vervaeke nerd. So a lot of that stuff with Pierre Hadot, synthesizing philosophy and the spiritual life, and so ran right into a more Neoplatonic framework. But then I was able to take the Pageauian stance. I think Pageau is as Zen as you can get, but the total phenomenological embodiment of, hey, I'm a Catholic Italian American. I can do all the cognizing without any cognitive dissonance on understanding the metaphorical nature of how we relate to the world, and that if I'm going to relate to the world in the most supreme, most sacred way, relating to another human as the sacred is completely understandable to me. And so I just participated in my heritage in my community, and so I just never dropped the Neoplatonism marker, and I participate in my Catholic Trinitarian heritage. That's how I got there.
Yeah, the way it sounds to me is that it seems as though you've maintained Neoplatonic position or Platonic position and used Christianity as a plug. As opposed to standing boldly on the truth of Christianity without the need for other categories.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would point to that is I would just say that I've found plenty of in the Christian story and heritage, I've found plenty of fellowship and wisdom and different writers who also identified as that. But I understand what you're saying is that you feel like it's kind of hedging my bets or something.
Yeah, in some sense. I mean, there's a sense in which borrowing the language in the first place is not really needed, right? Like you can just assert it.
I'd probably even in heresy further with you and say too is I don't even drop many times. I don't even drop the Zen marker. I still call myself a Christian Zen Neoplatonist because again, just addressing my journey and the fact that on my journey, Christ never, all good is God's good from Justin Martyr. I have a pinch of perennialism in a Dugan sense and in a this Pageauian phenomenological stance that I take seriously. Is like I'm a Christian. I'm not worried about the ancient Ming dynasty or and blah blah blah. And so there's a kind of just a nod and an appreciation of this is the spiritual journey that I came with and identified with, and there hasn't been any. Mark can make his attempt, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not unconvinced at this point, and I'll even give you the temporality of the neo in the mid, like for sure there can be semantics on it's just Platonism. Okay, that's fine.
But
fine. I'll surrender that. But I will say that I haven't ever found a a cold hard philosophical refutation that broke and made me rethink this
No,
this
it is, but
philosophical
it's
journey
not.
that I've been incorporating, adopting, and learning about through these past 6-7 years now.
Matthew, let me try this. Okay, I think what Bruce is objecting to is identification with the path or the journey, which is very Zen, by the way, right? Or maybe an over-identification, saying, "Look, you got to Christianity. No one cares how. Congratulations." I think like drop all this other stuff because who cares? It's all is what it is. And what I would say is that hold on. What I would say is
it's
following.
referential. Okay, go ahead.
No, but it's not. Like it's not. Like it's kind
If
of
you know anything
irrelevant.
about Zen, it absolutely does, because the nomenclature and the dogma is absolutely arbitrary and referential.
Not in the
becomes
Eastern
way.
tradition.
It becomes, are you following the way of Christ, which is what the original nomenclature of the followers of Christ was.
That's a very Western casting of Eastern thought. Eastern thought's not like that at all. But again, the problem is over identification on the journey, right? And the thing is, like, you are where you are now, and you can identify how you identify now. And the bottom line is that the end of the Republic, I haven't done this video yet. I keep teasing it. I just got to sit down and do it. It's just a lot of work. The end of the Republic, the end of Book 10. Okay, Book 10 starts out with all this stuff about how, that basically poets are bad, right? Poetry's bad. He starts, a lot of the Republic is like this. And then he starts to redeem poetry, right? And he redeems Homer to some degree. And the very end of the book, the last thing in Book 10 of the Republic, there's double quotes and there's double quotes at the end. There's no commentary at the end of the book after a story. And the story that Plato tells in the Republic, which nobody mentions, why I don't know, because it's like actually the most important part of the text entirely. The story is the story of a freaking resurrection. That's the story. And so if you want to say the continuation of the philosophical Platonic tradition is obviously Christian because it gets embodied in Christ, the story that he tells, then you could say that. That's all you need to say. But that means you were never a Platonist because Plato was a believer in Christ. That's that's how Karen Wong described it to me years ago.
I love that construal, and it landed for me. And then I'm gonna go to bed here. But the last thing I just want to say is it is for me a little bit referential there, because the way you got to understand the whole identification accusation you said there. You're totally antithetical to Zen in all of its affordances and modes of being.
Well, I would say part of it
is to realize that at the end of the day, it's being. It's embodying Christ. I don't
right,
need
but again, that's what you're doing, Matthew. You're identifying with the journey. You're identifying with the journey. That's the
I'm
objection.
absolutely not. I'm trying to explain that. That's what I was trying to explain.
You just said you call yourself a Neoplatonic Trinitarian because you want to honor the journey.
And I'm trying to further the thought is, at the end of the day, those doctrines, I have the book on my shelf, Zen Christian. At the end of the day, those doctrines and those dogmas and those identifiers and categories all can still be stripped away and interrogated. And so it's more useful as a tool of a communicator of my journey than it is as a self-identifier of these are that's all I'm trying to say.
Right, but you don't need that. You can just use the self-identification.
Or say yes, I'm
irrelevant.
Well, I would say that.
Here's how I got here, some kind of thing like that. Anyways, all right, guys, I gotta crash out. Love y'all. Love you, Mark.
Okay.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Matthew. Good to see you. I did, Bruce. Before you go on, I just want to address a couple of quick things. Now, we love him because he first loved us. Understanding love comes from God as an emanation. There you go. That is correct. Michelle, thank you, sir. Appreciate the super sticker. That's awesome. You're the best.
It's frustrating to me because there's, as far as I'm concerned, Zen as such, it's too relative. It's a relativistic way by which to describe something.
The Western Buddhist tradition is, but again, there's a dichotomy in what he was saying. He's saying I'm not over identifying with the journey, but he's saying it's important for me to identify with my journey. And I'm like, well, you can't have both. Like, why are you identifying with I don't understand why you identify with your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there, in some sense, people like to use their story as testimonial, but
Right.
there's no need to keep the old self on.
Well,
Right, you put on the new self.
And identifying yourself as a Neoplatonist or a Platonist is not a story. It's a statement of a label that means
Yeah, and
very
I'm
different things
yeah.
to different people.
I mean, I suppose in some sense, if you were trying to reach across the aisle to people that were in that dialectic, who didn't have categories, language, or otherwise to understand Trinitarian doctrine, then
Right.
I suppose
Right.
it could be a language to use, but
Maybe.
that doesn't seem to be.
Right. Well,
to me,
I wouldn't broadcast on that on the internet. I would pick and choose who I told that to. And I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a danger because A, the Vervaeke camp is very small, and B, they're not very well read, and C, most of them don't understand Vervaeke. I'm sorry, but like they don't. Like I actually kind of do. And you know, we were on the Vervaeke Discord server for a long time working this stuff out. We did years of work understanding Vervaeke. So I'm going to make a claim here for sure that I understand Vervaeke a lot better than most people. And that's the problem, is that most of the people that are familiar with his work do not actually understand it very well at all. And fair enough, it's extremely hard. It's not a knock on anybody, man. Like you really have to pay attention. You have to take notes. We have notes, by the way, like if you want them, right? We're happy to discuss Vervaeke on the Mark of Wisdom server since we're no longer on the AptMC server, right? The problem with going out there and saying like, oh, this is my journey, is that you're implying that somebody else can take that journey too, and that you have a solution for them. And the AA people do this. They go, oh, what we need is AA because AA is a gateway to Christianity. And it's like, well, no, AA is a compression of Christianity. I'm not saying it's useless or you shouldn't try or whatever, but
Right.
like it's the wrong direction, guys. Like actually,
Well, as far as I would say, like I was saying to Matthew, in love and respect, gentleness and kindness, to me, it seems like a plug. Like you found,
yes,
and this is what AA does.
right.
It's a Christian plug.
Right.
And I don't think that embodies the trueness of dying to self, putting on the new self, and wearing the badge of Trinitarian Christian.
Where's the work? Exactly.
Yeah.
And the work is always hard because like
it's very hard.
People don't see the work.
And I mean, and people don't like mere assertion where you would say, no, I believe in the triune God, the God who rose from the dead and who creates unity among diversity. But that's an assertion.
Right.
And I don't think people are maybe
everyone's
of
trying
that.
to, right. They're trying to solve the atheist quote problem, which isn't a problem, of dogma. And it's like, that's not a problem. You just misunderstood what was going on. And Sally Joe shared a video actually today that I did listen to. Sally, thank you. But like, it's the same thing. Like you've cast this problem that doesn't have to exist, and then like misunderstood the world. And like, fair enough, maybe there's always usefulness in these things. And we do have to catch up on Matthew stuff. So he said, precisely, it's tool of communication. Yeah, maybe. To dig down into identity is futile. It's ephemeral. Yeah, but it's not ephemeral. It's a story, and stories matter, right? And better to communicate well. Yeah, but when you say things that don't match, like Neoplatonism, because it's an inherent contradiction, doesn't exist. You're pointing at something that doesn't exist, and so people look at that and they project into it whatever they want. And yeah, Sally Joe's right. A category does not give you influence. That's the problem. In science, it does. In reality, it really kind of doesn't. And in Matthew, it's all metaphor. Well, dogmatic about metaphor helps me not. Metaphors are anti-dogmatic. And that's the problem, is that we get stuck not wanting or not having a place, to be fair to Sally, to tell our story, right? When we're not where people want us to be, right? Because if you want the perfection of the world, or you want everybody to be saved or whatever, you can't tell a story about how you're not there yet, because people don't want to hear it, right? But you also have to tell your story, right? You have to tell people, no, I was homeless. You have to tell people that, right? So that they know, I went to jail, whatever it is. Like, you have to tell people that. And you can't just tell them like I went to jail or I was homeless. You gotta tell the story of it. You can't just identify as homeless person. That's not an identity. It doesn't help people. They will project into it whatever they want, and then they will come to very different conclusions about what happened to you. And that's not good for them, and it's not good for you. And that's what's happened to my quote reputation, right, within the quote TLC garbage thing, which is not a thing, by the way, right? This is why you need the Peterson sphere, because the Peterson sphere centers around something important, right, and allows enough leeway for you to be in it without having to conform to it, right, which is super important. And you're not supposed to do that with a religion. You're supposed to conform to it, period. Because
Correct.
it's bigger than you, it's outlasted you, and so you should submit to it, right? And in many ways, people will go, "I don't have a religion," and I say, you know, if you believe you do not have a religion, one will be provided to you without your knowledge or consent. Why? Because the thing you conform to, because you have to conform to something, is your religion. You just don't realize it. That's dangerous. You should know what you're worshiping. You should know what liturgy you're acting out, because you are. You don't have a choice. You're too stupid to develop all this stuff on your own. It's taken thousands of years for humans to figure this out. You're not figuring it out anytime soon, kid. Not you and your 5 smartest friends or the 10 smartest people in the world. It's never happening. Never happening. Thousands of years of cognition
Mark,
wins.
it's just dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous even if you're looking towards the patterns of reality and what is true. It's dangerous even then. Like
Exactly.
it's like this is not a joke. You're absolutely right. Like you can hardly survive. I mean, read the Gospels, read the Bible. It's clear. They
If you touch
crucified
the ark,
Christ,
you
for
die.
God's sake.
Like, yeah, it's
Like
touch
this
the
is
ark,
a scary world. Why are we pretending like it's some nice world and we can talk about, and they are false categories? There's no space for that in reality. That's the whole point.
exactly.
There's
Well,
no
and
space for it. Like, no, but reality, that's the justice of God.
and
Or if
what do
wanna
you and
call
what do
it
you
that.
yeah, but and what do you get when you try to act like the world is arbitrary or relative or whatever?
Yeah,
You get
death and hell. Death
you
and
get
hell.
an endless number or a flood of religious practices and religions, basically mini religions.
Yeah,
right?
and then we all get to inherit that world, and here we are right now. And isn't it just jolly great? It's not.
We get to live in hell. Yeah, we get to live in hell. You know, that's
It's
to some
not a
extent
little
imposed
thing.
on us by people who refuse to just go along with the thing. Look, if distributed cognition is real, and John Vervaeke is right about that, I know it's not his original work, whatever, right? Then the Bible is the smartest book ever written. So maybe you can't understand the smartest book ever written because you're not the smartest man ever to live. And even if you were, you probably can't understand the smartest book ever written because it wasn't written by one person. It was written by distributed cognition through time. And then maybe that means you should just read it and believe it and do what it says. Like maybe that's the answer. Like it's not that hard, right? And maybe you need, sorry, Bruce, symbolism and icons and saints because they're exemplars. To give Elizabeth her language, right? To allow you to operate in this world and contextualize that text, because you need to contextualize the text. You can't just read a text. That's ridiculous. That's postmodern. They're wrong about everything. Don't worry, they're bad people. That's why they're wrong about everything, right? Then if you had all that, if you were Catholics, because I still like the Orthodox, and they've got some things the Catholics definitely are screwing up. Then maybe everything will be fine, right? But you'd have to submit to do that, and you'd have to put in the work. To Bruce's excellent point, and that would suck.
Absolutely. And if
And if it
but it's
doesn't
not
suck, you're
doable.
doing it wrong. Like it's that simple.
Yeah, but it doesn't just suck. It's not doable. It's an illusion. It's illusory. It's
right.
not how reality works. That's what I think.
Yeah,
That's
you're
what
not
it's
gonna
all about.
you're not gonna get away with not submitting to something, and so you have to submit to something. You're just not smart enough to invent.
And you're going to
systems
embody
take care of
it.
the world.
My favorite
You're going to
aphorism.
embody it. Never mind. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. My favorite aphorism is it's not whether but which.
Yeah.
And that's the case. It's not whether you worship, it's what do you worship or which do you worship.
Right.
And that's the case. So you
Yeah.
you submit to yourself, the world, Neoplatonism,
The,
or you
the
submit to Christ.
or the exemplar of the individual, whatever the hell that's supposed to represent, which you don't know, by the way, because no one's ever told you, because no one has an answer. Right. And if you submit to those things, bad things happen to everybody else, not necessarily. The costs are distributed. So sometimes, right, the cost of the activist screaming in the middle of the street in a city doesn't go to the activist. And that's our failing. Like, we need to tell these people to get bent. And like I keep explaining to people, no, really, just stand up to them and tell them no, and they'll just scream
Right.
and cry and go home. They won't
Yeah.
get
Right,
violent
exactly.
because they're weak. They're weak,
That's
and they know they're
exactly
weak.
right. You're exactly right, Mark. That's all anybody needs to do. I don't understand why people don't know this simple truth,
Well-
that all of these people are so weak. My father had that experience at the University of Toronto. There were all these people young hippies trying to take over the university, and he simply got all of his engineering students together, and I don't know what they did, but the wimpy little hippies left after
They
saying
left.
that they were going to
Well,
take over.
yeah,
Right.
That's right. That's
They're
why
not-
it's so
they're weak.
important.
They're weak. People
Right.
need to say, excuse me, go home now and have your dinner. Like, I mean, it's kind of like what a school teacher would tell a naughty
Yep.
a child
Yep.
who's at
Yeah.
the It's not,
It's
it's not a
exactly-
big
exactly
deal.
right.
We don't need to make
That's-
a big deal about it.
That's exactly why I'm not a fan of borrowing the language.
You're right. It's too dangerous.
You don't yield the ground that way. You don't accept the categories implicitly or explicitly.
Right.
And you stand boldly on that. And unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I should say providentially, you may be persecuted for such. But that's fair, right? If you're going against the grain. But if you start borrowing things like Platonic form, Zen, love as such in some humanistic form, now you're yielding the ground, and you've decided to get into their worldview
Right.
and ride along, as opposed to crashing the car, right?
Right.
So that's what you want to do, and that's what do you say? Christians are for lions, right? So like, you're going to do that. So that's my biggest issue with the sort of philosophical borrowing of categories like the other person was doing. You need to assert the truth, and don't borrow the language.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
well,
too-
and-
you can do that if you live in a different world than we find ourselves in
Right.
today, where there's some consensus of everything. But the world is
Right.
so confused right now that we don't even know what we're talking about. Even Peterson,
Right.
we don't know what we're talking about
Right.
anymore, and so it's so incredibly dangerous to
Exactly.
to not being extraordinarily careful, because everything's chaotic, like beyond what most people think, in my humble opinion. This world nowadays is way more dangerous and chaotic than most people realize, unless you've been
Oh,
fortunate
yeah.
enough to experience the violence.
No, that's true. That's
It's
true.
a
People are getting lucky.
violent world, and we are one step away from untold bloodshed and violence. If people don't know that, they've got
And
a
if you
problem.
look at the numbers, it's in the numbers. If you actually are a materialist, go look at the freaking numbers. They've been bad for a long time. We broke the world with the fake news virus scam, and now we're suffering for it. And that's accelerating. It's not getting better. And Peterson says this: don't borrow the language of your enemies. Right? Don't use the language of your enemies. Yeah, absolutely not. And the thing is, people ask me, I said, look, I stand up to these people all the time. And you know what happens to me? Nothing. They run away. They
Right.
run away.
Right.
And like, you can say, oh, you're mean. I don't care. Like, they need to run away. They need to go
Well-
away. They need to rethink their lives, because they're children and we haven't formed them. And that's on us.
Exactly.
We need to
I
form
agree.
them. Formation is the missing piece. No one's
Yeah.
talking about formation. Formation is what we haven't been doing to children. And so they have not grown up. I do not care what their age is. I do not care what you think their experience is. I do not care what you think they've been through in their lives. I just don't care. That's not relevant. They're not formed. Because
I
if they were
agree with
formed,
you.
they would be polite.
Yes.
They would know how to
Yes.
handle situations of conflict, and they would not scream at the sky. Okay.
Right.
Because formed people don't act like 3-year-olds all the time. And these people do. And that is the problem. And you can say they were mature once, they have become immature over time. I know people, some of the people, who were very good friends of mine, who were very good at so-called critical thinking, I would just call it thinking, who were very good, who trained me in some of the rhetoric that I understand and logic and reason and rationality, are no longer like that. They have lost those skills. I am sorry. It is very sad. It actually makes me kind of tear up because they were very smart. They're still very smart people, but they're possessed, right? They're doing weird things. Their logic, reason, rationality is not helping them at all. In fact, it's making everything worse, right? And they weren't like that before. And you need to recognize this idea of constant progress towards some ridiculous utopia that doesn't exist is not the world we live in. We can slip back in an instant. You know, that happens to people all the time. And you need to be vigilant, and you need to realize these people are not formed. And by you not backhanding them every once in a while, which I used to do to people all the time, by the way, and they've all thanked me, every single one of them. So don't be thinking that's a bad thing, that you're making the world worse because you're not standing up to them and you're not taking a stance. And when you don't take a principled stance, it's no wonder no one else has any principles. And yeah, I get, they say they want to save the climate. They don't. I can tell by how they act. I don't need their words. I don't need some complicated spreadsheet or numbers. I don't need that. I can just look at them, observe them in the world. I have a live stream on that, right? We're preferring complicated explanations over simple observations of the world, right? There's no reason to get complicated about this. That you can just see what people believe by how they act and believe how they act. And act on that and not on their words. And the problem will go away. Stand by your principles.
Right. And the question would be somebody that's looking to save the planet. Always the question with these activists or anyone that's in this position is why? Why do you want to save the planet? Why? And if you push somebody, they have no transcendent meaning behind the reasoning for their assertions.
They're bored.
They're just doing
nothing
stuff
better to do,
or they're measuring fruit as though that's the meaning, right? Look, if you look at your fruit, right, you're going to miss it because now what happens when your fruit isn't ripe, right, or it's not tasty, or there's not as much of it. The meaning behind their why is amalgamate. It's relativistic. It's you'll have people say, well, I just love people. Why? Like, why do you love people? Why do you care about other people? Why should you care about other people?
Exactly.
You see, and most people who are making these assertions are merely externalists or pragmatists in that sense. And they'll say, well, I just want people to be happy.
They're following
a dogma, or something along those lines.
They're following a dogma,
right?
And they don't realize it. They think it's not a dogma because it's good or something,
but it's not
good.
Right? It's not good. What happens when somebody loses their leg?
Yeah.
What happens when you get into a car crash and you can no longer see?
Yeah.
Where's your happiness? Where's your fruit? You see, it's dead end. It's a dead end.
Well, then that happens to all of us because it turns out we all grow old and die if we don't have an accident before that. So, yeah,
right.
It's already
but while you're alive,
dead end. It's a knowable dead end. You've already given it away. You the thing you want is never going to happen. So, if that's your plan, you need a new plan.
I don't know. I just think the real problem is that people do not understand how dangerous life is. People just don't understand that anymore.
I agree.
And so,
I agree.
So there's no need for attention. If we live in this rosy, progressive world, why do you need to pay attention? Everything's good and everything's getting better. Blah blah blah. Or else then they flip over, like Bruce said, to the climate problem. They do these weird flips.
Right.
Everything's getting better, but the world is disintegrating. Like there's no common sense. The problem is they're not aware of, they're not willing to actually understand what they're experiencing, because anybody who's living in this world, particularly in North America, knows how bad things are. Things are bad. You only have to drive down the street in Toronto and see all these street people, like maimed, starving to death people, to realize this is not the world from 50 years ago, man. We are not
or 10 years ago. Or 10 years ago. It's
Like,
gotten really
like
bad.
all you need to do is notice your world. We don't even need to talk too much. Just
Well, you
look
need
at
to-
the world around
No, but
you
you
and
need to
realize we're living in
believe.
crazy
But
times.
you need to believe your eyes. You need to believe your
Yeah,
experience. You need to
yeah.
believe what's in front of you. And
Yeah.
people are not like then. I've got relatives in New York City. I don't know why. I'm like, you guys got to get the hell out of there. I don't know what you're doing. You can't stay there. It's not safe. It's not safe.
I hear you.
Well,
Mark.
again, if you look at people in New York City, people that are having crises on the streets, and you have no reason why to help them
Right,
outside of measuring outcomes,
right.
Right.
it will never last. It will
Right.
it will die. It will fizzle out.
Yeah.
And so we may have had small resurgences in the 60s. Maybe you could argue in the early 2000s. But there's never been a solid foundation around the initiatives. They're
Right.
just looking at outcomes and hoping for happiness. And
Right.
these people hit a wall and they've had no foundation.
Right, right.
You know, and I don't deal with the
Exactly.
same people Mark deals with very often. Mark is dealing with people without language. I'm usually dealing with people that have hit a massive wall and they're in like spiritual crisis.
Right.
And that's just the nature of where I live and the people I interact with. And that's because they've never actually addressed the meaning of which they supposedly had, and it was never put together. And so now here we are trying to do Humpty Dumpty to put them back together again. But there was never anything there in the first place. So,
Right.
you know, you can't put back together something that was never to be put together, you know?
Right.
So,
But that's the overlap between the crisis of faith and the meaning crisis right there.
Yeah.
Bruce.
yeah.
We should
And it's
do a
terrible.
crisis of faith, meaning crisis conversation. That would be interesting.
Yeah,
We
let's
we
do
could
that
totally do
one.
that.
Can you do that
Yeah.
next week?
I don't know. Maybe. I
Potentially.
don't know. Potentially.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting idea.
No,
I mean, there's
that'd be
definitely some
really
overlap.
good. Yeah, that would be really useful. That'd be.
Yeah,
I
I
would
could-
love that.
I could tease it out. I mean, I did talk about it with Pastor Paul at one point. So I have a conversation with him on it. But really, we could tease it out better with Bruce because Bruce does the work. Like he's got the Thursday thing going on. Actually, Bruce, I need to talk to you about that at some point. Remind me, because I want to go up to DC and grab Father Eric and
Oh,
go.
okay, cool.
go do
That
that.
might be interesting.
Yeah, that'll be worth it. It's a long drive for me, but I'm willing to try it.
Yeah.
That was really
Yeah.
a good evening.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, we just have to set up something that works for the two of us, I guess. But
Mhm.
we'll figure it out. But yeah, that might be a good conversation to have. But I do want to. We've been going over 4 hours, so I want to close it down. But
Yeah,
I want to get
yeah.
I want to get closing thoughts. Elizabeth, what are your closing thoughts on everything or anything or everything we've talked about?
I
Mhm.
think this live stream is so useful for people, and I just think it's remarkable what you're doing, Mark. So my compliments to you and my thanks to you for giving all your time to this, because it's an enormous amount of effort and work and time and attention, I'm quite sure. And it's really invaluable. And I did miss it in Italy.
Oh well, thank you. I'm glad. I'm sorry that you missed it, but I'm also glad that you missed it in different ways. So that's lovely. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad you brought your insights back for us because it's super important to hear people's experiences on the ground with this stuff, and you do that beautifully. And you're beautiful, so that makes sense. Fractal similarity, right? Self-similar fractal at all levels. Beautiful woman sharing her beautiful experience. She returns back from a beautiful place, so that works. So yeah, thank you. I really do appreciate your support. It's been really helpful to have. Bruce, what do you got for closing thoughts, and then I'll close this out and kill the stream.
Yeah, consider the cost of your life, eternal soul, and those around you's eternal soul, and don't consider the temporary cost, but consider the eternal cost. And so, you know, considering the cost is the topic. That's what I would say. Consider the eternal cost, and do not take things lightly. Believe on Christ for all of your strength, and eternity will be yours.
Wow, I like that. See, we get a little Christian-y perspective. I still hate the word Christian. I'll go into that someday. Maybe Bruce, if you get time next Friday, we can do a. I'd love to, instead of just doing monologues, I'd love to do at least one of these where we start out with two people going back and forth. That would be fun. But thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to see Jacob. I'm glad he linked his channels here for me. That's great. Visit Navigating Patterns. There's so much there. And give some feedback. Come to next Friday's stream. I don't think there's any conflicts next Friday, so I should be doing everything. And check out my Intimacy Crisis videos. I got 2 of them with Catherine. I got one on Andrew with the Bangs channel. Look, everybody, I hope you all had a good week. I know my week was awesome because of my birthday, but I hope everybody else had an awesome week. And have a great week coming up. If you want to see more, I'm probably going to be on Father Eric stream on Sundays because I'm usually there in case nobody shows up. And of course the whole channel, markofwisdom.org website and the Mark of Wisdom Discord server. Those are other ways to interact with the work, and petersonsphere.com if you want to check out the Peterson timeline and stuff. Thank you very much. I hope to see everybody next week. Have a wonderful time, and we'll see you later. Enjoy everything.
Bye, Bruce.